Chapter 2553. Good. Immortal He Ping nodded almost without hesitation. In that case, I approve the pardon order. Now send a disciple to send the pardon order to the Sky Sentry City. After that, Immortal He Ping flicked his sleeves, and the whole image gradually began to blur, and then disappeared. During the whole process, Immortal He Ping's face was as usual, and there was no change when he said, "Good." No one knew if he was happy or angry. When the image of Immortal He Ping disappeared, Hengju raised his eyebrows. When he was about to send a message, Gao Wei of the Xuanyan school said with a smile, "Since fellow Taoist Heng Ming from the Utopia faction has reported to the head, I have to let the head know, otherwise I will be negligent." Well, now the crowd did not have to disperse. They still stood in the distance, but Hengju moved back, and Gao Wei stood in front of Hengju. Gao Wei made a gesture and threw the token into the air, but there was a flash of brilliance in the air. After a while, the figure of Fairy Yingjue did not appear. Gao Wei was a little surprised. He knew that this image transmission method was directly connected to Fairy Yingjue's magic treasure. As long as he activated his Dharma power, Fairy Yingjue must have some intuition. In the past 10 times, Fairy Yingjue appeared immediately after he used it. Could it be that the head has other things to do? While thinking, Gao Wei's face was full of smiles. When he was about to speak, he saw the brilliance suddenly stagnate, and with a slight tremor, the image of Fairy Yingjue flashed in the air. However, it was obvious that Fairy Yingjue's face was full of displeasure, and a faint green light flashed in her eyes. Junior and others greet Fairy Yingjue. All the cultivators bowed and saluted, so they could not see clearly. "What's the matter?" Fairy Yingjue glanced at them and said coldly, "Disciple Gao Wei is now reporting the situation of the battle in the Sky Sentry City to the head, and there is also a good news." Gao Wei's words were very similar to Hengju's. But Fairy Yingjue's reaction was different from Immortal He Ping's. Fairy Yingjue was a little impatient, and said lightly, "Didn't you just report a few days ago? You have begun to test the sword cultivator's actual situation? Now there is a situation? Then you should launch a fierce attack based on the situation. They are just a few illusory swordsmen. Do you think you can't kill all of the hundreds of thousands of disciples?" Gao Wei looked a little embarrassed. Obviously, the time of his report was definitely not a few days ago, but he did not dare to correct him. He lowered his head and said, "Yes, but..." "There's no buts." Fairy Yingjue said coldly, "I don't know how to deploy troops. All of you are intelligent people. You only need to work together to spread the name of my Dao sect. Even if you lose, we won't blame you." Seeing that Fairy Yingjue was about to flick her sleeves, Gao Wei hurriedly said, "Does sect head still remember the first bounty for this battle?" "I don't remember." Fairy Yingjue replied bluntly. Gao Wei smiled apologetically. "Of course the sect leader is busy. This is just a small matter, so it's fine if you don't remember. But today, I want to report to the sect leader that Xiao Mao, a disciple in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage of the Xuanyan school, together with the disciples of the Utmost Happiness faction and the Imperial Thunder faction, killed the third-grade illusory swordsman, Qin Jian." "Oh? A disciple in the foundation establishment stage of the Xuanyan school killed the illusory swordsman?" Fairy Yingjue was stunned and seemed to be a little interested. "Disciple Xiao Mao greets the sect head." Xiao Mao hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. "If you?" Fairy Yingjue seemed to have some impression of Xiao Mao, and a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. "Yes, it's disciple Xiao Mao." Xiao Mao knew that Fairy Yingjue knew him through the hunting seedlings plan, and hurriedly replied, "Not bad." Fairy Yingjue rolled her eyes and nodded. "You have made a great contribution to the Xuanyan school. In addition to the bounty on the bounty, after the battle, I will reward you." "Thank you, sect head." Xiao Mao expressed his gratitude again. "Yes, sect head knows." Gao Wei hurriedly said, "Killing Qin Jian was the first bounty issued by the conference hall. Xiao Mao and the other two completed this seemingly impossible task and have already received the bounty on the bounty. Also, Immortal He Ping of the Utmost Happiness faction has just rewarded Li Zongbao." "Yes, I know." Fairy Yingjue said impatiently. Whatever He Ping rewarded, the Xuanyan school will do the same. Yes, I understand. Gao Wei was really helpless and hurriedly said again, Marshal nephew Li Zongbao has requested for a special pardon from the Utmost Happiness faction. Sect head, please issue the special pardon to reward Xiao Mao's battle achievements. Special pardon? Fairy Yingzhua was slightly stunned, and then she flicked her sleeves and said indifferently, I know. Seeing Fairy Yingzhua's figure disappear, Gao Wei's mood was like a bucket of cold water being poured on his head. It couldn't be helped. Most of the original infant stage masters were focused on cultivating, and they didn't care too much about the battle. After all, the battle of the Golden Core stage masters was just the prelude. Even if the Golden Core stage masters were defeated in this battle, there would still be a group of original infant stage masters with extraordinary strength behind them. These original infant stage masters were definitely not people that the sword cultivators could easily resist. Gao Wei smiled bitterly, and Xiao Mao hurriedly bowed and said, Thank you, Uncle Gao. Hey, you're welcome. This is what you deserve. Gao Wei stepped back and looked at Qian Imo. Qian Imo was a little hesitant. After all, Xiao Hua wasn't in the conference hall at this time. The effect of him asking for Qian Leizi's help was not as good as that of Taoist He Ping and Fairy Yingzhua. Moreover, he didn't know whether Qian Leizi would be like Fairy Yingzhua and give him a bucket of cold water. Fellow cultivator Qian, please. Gao Wei wouldn't let Qian Imo go, and he shouted loudly. But Qian Imo had no choice but to take out the token in front of everyone's eyes. As he made a spell, Qian Leizi's red face appeared in midair. Greetings, Senior Qian Leizi. Everyone bowed again. You all get up. Qian Leizi had shown his face in the conference hall earlier. At this time, he waved his hand and said, You all have worked hard since the battle started. Qian Imo heaved a sigh of relief, and everyone said in unison, Thank you for your concern, Senior. What's the matter now? Qian Leizi raised his head and looked at Qian Imo. I have a few important things to report. Qian Imo didn't dare to keep it a secret. He told Qian Leizi about the current situation of the battle and John Doe who could perform the thunder travel. However, before he told Qian Leizi about Qin Jian, Qian Leizi's body shook and he shouted, Qian Imo, are you sure? He's a disciple of the thunder-controlling sect at the late stage of Gold Core realm? I haven't confirmed it yet. Qian Imo smiled apologetically, but according to Kanshing, it can't be wrong. Others don't know my thunder escape skill, but how can the disciples of the Canlei Palace not know it? How is this possible? Qian Leizi widened his eyes, but his voice became lower and lower. Of course, he couldn't believe that there was a disciple at the late stage of Gold Core realm in the thunder-controlling sect who could surpass him in the thunder escape skill. Quickly find Kansheng and ask him to return to the Sky Thunder Peak. Qian Leizi raised his eyebrows and ordered, Qian Imo, tell them that once they find John Doe's trace, immediately. Speaking of this, Qian Leizi hesitated. After all, John Doe was a cultivator who could perform the thunder escape skill. Ordinary disciples of the Gold Core realm couldn't catch up with him. Okay, you just need to pay attention to him. If you can find his trace or which Thunder Palace he belongs to, it will be better. After this battle, we will all go to the Sky Thunder City. Qian Leizi sighed and wondered if John Doe was a disciple secretly taught by a distraction stage master. Seeing that Qian Leizi was absent-minded, Qian Imo bowed again and said, Besides this, I also want to report to the sect leader that Xiao Hua, a disciple of the thunder-controlling sect, joined hands with the disciples of the Xuanyan school and the Utopia faction to kill Qin Jian, a swordsman at the thunder-controlling stage 3 of the illusory sword skill. Qin Jian? Isn't he the swordsman who assassinated Tu Hong? What? The disciples of our Taoism sect did what the elders of the Shui region couldn't do? Our disciples of the thunder-controlling sect also have a share? Xiaohua again? That disciple of the Foundation establishment stage? Qian Leizi asked curiously with a hint of embarrassment and joy in his eyes. Where is Xiaohua? Qian Leizi naturally knew about Tu Hong. He was extremely dissatisfied with Shui Taoist, so he didn't care if Shui Taoist knew about Tu Hong and Yu Meng. Seeing that Shui Daoist didn't manage to kill Qin Jian, and instead, a foundational disciple from his Imperial Lightning sect and 2 disciples from other sects completed the task, how could he not be happy? However, when he looked around and didn't find Xiao Hua, he asked. Sect leader, Xiao Hua has another important task. He was sent to another place without returning to the city. Qian Mo replied hurriedly. Good. Qian Lei clapped his hands and said, Xiao Hua has made many outstanding contributions to the thunder-controlling sect in the Sky Thunder City. He should be rewarded handsomely. Yes, I also think so. Therefore, I would like to ask the sect leader to reward Xiao Hua to boost the morale of our disciples. Qian Mo said with a smile. Well, what should I reward him with? Qian Lei was very happy and asked in an inquiring tone. Qian Mo knew what Qian Lei meant. He said hurriedly with a smile, Xiao Hua was not in the conference hall. Therefore, Li Zongbao of the Utopia faction and Xiao Mao of the Xuanyan school have asked for rewards from Immortal He Ping and Fairy Yingzhua. Really? Qian Lei said with a smile, then our thunder-controlling sect can't be stingy. We can't be worse than them. Tell me, what precious rewards did the Utopia faction and the Xuanyan school give? Well, the sect leader knows that the Utopia faction and the Utopia faction have rewarded Xiao Hua with a special pardon order. Qian Mo didn't dare to hide the truth, although he also thought the special pardon order was unreasonable. A special pardon order? Qian Lei was stunned. He said casually, well, let's wait until Xiao Hua returns to the Sky Thunder Peak. Anyway, this is a great contribution. I will remember it in my heart. Senior Qian. Li Zongbao's heart skipped a beat. He said hurriedly with a bow, if I may be so bold, I would like to ask you to do it today. Li Zongbao of the Utopia faction? Qian Lei was a little unhappy. I know I can't do that. Li Zongbao's heart was trembling. He still didn't dare to straighten his back. However, he still said in a low voice, I think this matter should not be delayed. Chapter 2554. Following which, Li Zongbao repeated the reason from before. Therefore, this junior begs senior to reward Xiao Hua and greatly increase the morale of our Dao sect disciples. I see. After listening to Li Zongbao's analysis of the battle situation and the reason for the additional reward, he praised Li Zongbao in his heart. He glanced at Li Zongbao and said with a smile, you have a clear understanding of the battle situation. This additional reward is nothing. For disciples like you who killed Qin Jian and cleaned up the filth in Sky Patrol City, the special pardon order is really dispensable. How about this? This old man will give the special pardon order to Xiao Hua like your sect. In addition, inform Xiao Hua that when he returns from the battle, this old man will reward him handsomely. Yes, I understand. Li Zongbao was overjoyed, but he looked disappointed and sighed. If I had known, I would have asked Xiao Hua to come back. I will be the last to report. Ha! You don't have to be disappointed. Qian Lei laughed. Your Heping is not stingy. When you return, there will be more rewards. With that, Qian Lei waved his sleeves and disappeared slowly. At this time, Qian Lei opened his mouth slightly as if he wanted to say something. Because he had not reported to Qian Lei about the horrifying phoenix. Of course, the reason why he put it last and even hid it from Qian Lei was because he was afraid that Qian Lei would ask him about his negligence. Ha! That's enough. After Qian Lei disappeared, Heng Ming clapped his hands and said, the masters of the 3 sects are indeed wise. With the extra reward, our disciples will be able to kill Jian Xiu. Senior Qian Lei said that the rewards from Sky Patrol City will be great. I will send someone to inform Sky Patrol City now. Let's see what they will reward. On the surface, the crime of Tu Hong's assassination was still pinned on Qin Jian. Xiao Hua and the other 2 had killed Qin Jian. Even though Shui Yu's spiritual master knew this, he could only pinch his nose and admit it. The rewards would definitely be generous. Sure enough, in the time it took to smoke half a cigarette, the disciple that Heng Ming sent to Sky Patrol City returned. Naturally, there was a Foundation establishment disciple from Sky Patrol City following behind him. This disciple brought a generous reward, but strangely he didn't bring any orders from Shuiyu Jinren, not even a verbal order. Heng Ming sneered in his heart. He even glanced at Li Zongbao. He knew that Tu Hong was not assassinated by Qin Jian, so how could Shuiyu Sage not know it? At this moment, Li Zongbao took the credit for killing Qin Jian on his shoulders. He had completely disrupted Shuiyu Enlightened Master's plan. It was already good enough that Shuiyu Enlightened Master was willing to give him a reward. Fellow Taoists, this old man will now issue an order to withdraw the #1 bounty on my head from the Great Tao Cultivator battle. Heng Li said loudly with a smile, his voice filled with pride. Thank you, Shuiyu Sage. Qian Mo and Gao Wei shouted. The others naturally agreed. Just as the Sky Patrol City's conference hall issued a reward to commend Li Zongbao, Xiao Mao, and Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua, the one who killed Qin Jian, was flying above the boundless snowfield. As he flew, he scanned the area with his Buddhist consciousness without any pattern. He became even more impatient. Damn it, isn't it in this direction? Why do I feel that something is wrong? What's so special about it? Where is the purple jasmine flower? Of course, Xiao Hua did not know what the purple jasmine flower looked like. He only found some information from Marshal Kuen's message talisman. However, at this moment, there were some slight ripples in the Buddha fire that had not reacted for a long time. These ripples were somewhat similar to when Zhong Haoren knelt on the mountain and begged Xiao Hua back in Zhongling Mountain Villa. What's going on? Xiao Hua was stunned and stopped. This feeling was not similar to the throbbing of the hand of karma. It was more appropriate to say that it was a sudden impulse. Why are there cultivators here? Just as Xiao Hua cautiously scanned the area with his Buddhist awareness, he found that there were several cultivators about 100 miles away. When Xiao Hua's Buddhist consciousness returned to where the cultivators were, his expression became even more wonderful. I knew it. My wife is here, how can this guy be far away? However, why are these two people here? Moreover, the two of them, their expressions are a little strange. Xiao Hua's face was filled with a look of understanding. Moreover, there was still some incredulity in his expression. His figure suddenly slowed down, and he used the hibernating thunder escape to fly 100 li away. 100 miles away, it was still a flat snowfield. However, there were some sparse vegetation on the snowfield. Although there were very few vegetation and the color was very light, almost all of it was grayish-white. There were only a few spots of green on the vegetation. However, it was still green. In this endless snowfield, there was a trace of vitality. Unfortunately, this vitality did not arouse the vitality of the world. Instead, above the vegetation, there were more than a dozen people with swords drawn. Their fierce auras were soaring to the sky and annihilated this trace of vitality. The dozen people were divided into 3 groups. One group was led by a dignified person with 2 or 3 arrogant and handsome disciples of the Huanhua sect. Who else could it be but Yun Jiechong? The other group was led by a middle-aged man who was not very tall but had a straight figure. He looked like he was the only one in the world and everyone else had to bow down to him. This person had a strong temperament and was very refined, but at this time, his eyes were filled with anger. Behind him were 4 young disciples. These disciples were dressed in clean clothes and their manners were slightly restrained. The anger in their eyes was even more intense. This refined and determined middle-aged man was none other than Zhongling Mountain Village's Zhong Haoren. However, Zhong Haoren was already at the early stage of foundation establishment, and the few young people near him were around the 10th layer of qi refining. As for the 3rd group, there was only one person. Moreover, this person was a delicate female swordsman. She was also someone Xiao Hua was familiar with, Gu Yu of the Void Heaven Sword School. These 3 groups of people who had no connection with each other were unexpectedly gathered together. No wonder Xiao Hua was surprised. However, if Xiao Hua carefully looked, he would be able to see a palm-sized, pony-like thing above the snow region. He would not be so surprised. However, that thing was now stuck with a yellow talisman and lying motionlessly on the gray-white vegetation. How could Xiao Hua distinguish it? At this time, Yun Jiechong and Zhong Haoren were in a state of mutual hostility. However, Yun Jiecheng was unarmed and coldly looked at Zhong Haoren with disdain. Moreover, his vigilant gaze occasionally passed over Zhong Haoren and fell on Gu Yu's body. Gu Yu's complexion was as usual. Although she was in a confrontation with the two groups of cultivators and was somewhat far away from them, it was obvious that she was somewhat close to Zhong Haoren. Gu Yu's pretty eyebrows did not reduce her beauty. Because she did not reveal her invisible sword, she gave people a feeling of pity. Fellow Taoist. Although Zhong Haoren was only at the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, he was not afraid in the face of Yun Jiecheng, who was only at the peak of the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Although his eyes were burning with anger, he still indifferently said, "This Zhong saw this Ganoderma horse, and the yellow talisman on its body was also struck by this Zhong. How could it now belong to fellow Taoist? Moreover, fellow Taoist indiscriminately attacked me with a magic tool. If this swordsman didn't block it, this Zhong would have already died. This Zhong really doesn't understand. In the eyes of cultivators, is a cultivator a fellow Taoist? Or is the swordsman a fellow Taoist?" After saying this, Zhong Haoren rushed towards Gu Yu and saluted, "Many thanks to Miss for upholding justice and saving me." However, Gu Yu did not pay attention to him and only looked at the two people vigilantly. Yun Jiecheng sneered and said disdainfully, "Which sect are you a disciple of? Didn't you see I's Taoist robe? What reason does a disciple of my Huanhua sect need for something he wants?" When Zhong Haoren saw that Yun Jiecheng was pointing at his sect, he could only reply, "Senior Marshal Brother is a disciple of the Huanhua sect, so this Zhong naturally knows. However, since Senior Marshal Brother is a disciple of the Huanhua sect, you should have the demeanor of a big sect in the country of Xi. You shouldn't have competed with I. You shouldn't have attacked me without saying anything." He, Yun Jiecheng sneered. "Do you think that you, a cultivator at the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, can capture this Ganoderma horse? Can your yellow talisman easily imprison the Ganoderma horse? Even so, fellow Taoist, you have to make it clear." Zhong Haoren's eyes narrowed slightly. He was really angry, but he still defended himself. "If this Zhong knew that there was something fishy about it, I would definitely return this Ganoderma horse." "Ha, I'm dying of laughter." Yun Jiecheng laughed so hard that he swayed back and forth. He pointed with his hand and said, "If this Ganoderma horse fell into your hands, you would still take it out. Do you really think I'm a baby boy? Others don't know, but this Zhong would definitely return it." Zhong Haoren replied word by word. "Maybe." Yun Jiecheng stopped laughing. He looked at Zhong Haoren from head to toe and said, "You see that I have the intention to kill you, but you are still defending yourself. If you are not pedantic, then you have other plans. Do you want to join forces with this swordsman?" Then Yun Jiecheng came to his senses and said coldly, "Since you already know that I am a disciple of the Huanhua sect, why didn't you report your sect? Look, you are not wearing my cultivator's battle robe, and now you have the help of a swordsman from the Huan kingdom. Do I still need to say it? You must be the spies of the Huan kingdom swordsmen." After saying that, Yun Jiecheng waved his hand and shouted, "Come on, disciples, take down these spies. No matter if they are dead or alive, this is all due to our efforts." Yes, the three disciples of the Huanhua sect received the order and clapped their hands. 3 magic treasures that were overflowing with brilliance flew into the air. Each of them reflected a multicolored light that was dozens of feet long. They swept up all the spiritual chi of heaven and earth around them and smashed toward Zhong Haoren and the others with a faint roar. Among the 3 magic treasures, one was in the shape of a staff. In the multicolored light, the green wooden staff formed a wooden wave. The thumb-sized shadow of the staff hit Zhong Haoren and the chi-refining disciple behind him. Chapter 25:55. The other magical weapon was a fist-sized fire pearl. Its brilliance was the brightest. Even in this extremely cold snowfield, it still emitted an orange-red brilliance that shot out about 10 feet. Within the brilliance, the 3 aura refining disciples behind Zhong Haoren were shrouded in layers and layers of fire. The scorching heat that assaulted their faces caused the 3 aura refining disciples' expressions to greatly change. As for the third magic weapon, it was a scarlet-yellow silk ribbon. As it flew in the air, there were faint runes flowing on its surface. Following behind the fire bead, it resembled a spirit serpent, shrouding all four of them except for Zhong Haoren. Seeing that the three mid-foundation building cultivators had unexpectedly used rare magic weapons as soon as they attacked, and under their magic power, those magic weapons emitted a terrifying aura, Zhong Haoren and the other four aura refining disciples couldn't help but greatly change their expressions. Apart from Zhong Haoren, who had stepped into the foundation building realm, the other four were only in the aura refining realm. Not to mention three middle-stage foundation building cultivators using three magic weapons. Even if a middle-stage foundation building cultivator didn't use any magic weapons, Zhong Haoren and the other four aura refining disciples wouldn't be a match for them. However, as soon as the three magic weapons left their hands, they immediately displayed their might and simply smashed down without holding back. Aside from being alarmed, the five disciples could only clap their hands together and raise one hand. Unexpectedly, a dozen or so yellow talismans of various colors appeared in their hands, and in their other hands, several flying swords appeared. The swords flickered as they closely followed the yellow talismans and stabbed towards the three magic weapons that had already fallen several meters above their heads. Puff, puff. A dozen or so soft sounds rang out. The dozens of activated yellow talismans had just absorbed a small amount of spiritual chi of heaven and earth when they were crushed by the brilliance of the magic weapons and turned into fragments that drifted down. As for the yellow talismans, they simply couldn't absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Under the magic power of the aura refining disciples, they only flashed a faint brilliance before being annihilated. The intact yellow talismans were just like scrap paper that drifted in the air. When he looked at Zhong Haoren again, there was only a moment of panic on his face before his eyes flashed with determination. The flying sword in his hand turned into a rainbow as a sword beam pierced through the air towards the green staff shadow. Tisk, tsk, tsk, tisk. Zhong Haoren's flying sword was actually very fast. The sword light only flashed for a moment before it pierced into the staff shadows. It sounded like it was piercing through bamboo. Nearly 40% of the staff shadows at the front of the green staff magic treasure were actually pierced by Zhong Haoren's flying sword and disappeared without a trace. Oh! The middle foundation establishment disciple of the Huanhua sect was slightly taken aback. He hadn't expected Zhong Haoren's flying sword to be so sharp. However, the sneer on the disciple's face became even more pronounced. The remaining shadows of the staff didn't stop. Pa pa! A series of sword cries rang out. Zhong Haoren's flying sword was struck and sent flying backwards. Not good. When Zhong Haoren saw the green staff suddenly emit a brilliance again, he immediately knew that things weren't good. He hurriedly formed an incantation to retrieve his flying sword. However, after the row of staff shadows fell, a thick shadow of the green staff emerged from the staff shadows. Boom! It smashed into the flying sword. The brilliance of the flying sword quickly converged. Then, with a crisp kacha sound, a wide crack appeared on the flying sword. It extended from the tip of the flying sword all the way to the end of the sword. Zhong Haoren's face suddenly burst into a bright red color. Then, the red color suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a deathly white color. The broken flying sword fell into the dust along with the dark red color on his face. Zhong Haoren was like this, so the flying swords of the other four aura refining disciples were not worth mentioning. Although half of the shadow of the green staff had been destroyed by Zhong Haoren, the remaining shadow hit another flying sword. The flying sword had just flown out when it was immediately knocked down. It simply didn't have any effect. As for the three flying swords under the fire bead, they were even more miserable than Zhong Haoren's flying sword. At the same time that the fire pearl struck down the two flying swords, the flames inside it emerged and enveloped the two flying swords. Seeing the flying swords being refined by the flames, the two aura refining disciples couldn't resist at all no matter how much magic power they channeled. The other flying sword was directly smashed by the fire bead. The aura refining disciple who had a primordial spirit connection with the flying sword directly collapsed on the snowy ground. The snake-like silk ribbon followed behind the fire bead. At this time, it was flashing with a clear blue brilliance. Countless light silks shrouded Zhong Haoren and the other 4 people, completely isolating the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth. A gradually shrinking force of imprisonment firmly bound the 5 people. Seeing that Zhong Haoren had actually taken out his flying sword, Yun Guicheng's eyes flashed with a trace of contempt. He turned to look at Gu Yu and said coldly, "Sure enough, as I expected, these are the spies of the sword cultivator. Why don't you surrender?" The corner of Gu Yu's mouth flashed a trace of a sneer. He waved his hand, and the flying sword in his hand turned into a stream of light and pierced towards Yun Guicheng. This stream of light was like a fountain, transforming into countless thin sword lights in the air, covering his upper body. Every sword light flickered with a sharp and bright light, as if it could pierce through one's eyes. Yun Guicheng raised his head and roared. He clapped his hand and a semicircular magic weapon appeared in his hand. This semicircular magic weapon was very strange. It was orange-yellow in color, as if it was connected with a string of flames. When Yun Guicheng threw the magic weapon in the air, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth swarmed in. The runes on the flames flowed, and the flames transformed into a dragon with a head and a tail. It was Su Yenyun's family heirloom, the dragon-driving hoop. "Go!" Yun Guicheng pointed his finger, and the dragon shape suddenly enlarged to the size of a few feet. However, the dragon shape did not fly straight, but circled around a circular area. Woo-woo, there was a sound, and the center of the dragon-driving hoop produced a great suction force, blocking in front of Yun Guicheng. Gu Yu's flying sword light fell into the hoop like a firefly flying into a flame, as if there was no resistance at all. A flying sword in the shape of a sharp cone gradually appeared in the center of the dragon-driving hoop. "Ha!" Yun Guicheng chuckled, but before he could laugh, his face became serious again. This was because Gu Yu, who was controlling the flying sword in the air just now, had disappeared from her original place. The way she disappeared was so strange and so sudden. It was as if she wasn't there at all. What is going on?" Yun Guicheng was surprised. He hurriedly released his divine sense, trying to find out where Gu Yu had escaped to. But at this moment, an extremely sharp sword light appeared on Yun Guicheng's left shoulder. Yun Guicheng's protective brilliance flickered for a moment before it was immediately annihilated, and the sword light sank into his body. Blood light burst out along with the sword light. Yun Guicheng was shocked. He used his flying technique to quickly fly to the right. But how could his flying technique be compared to Gu Yu's? The sword light was like a maggot in a tarsal bone, and there was no sign of it being dodged. "Attack!" Yun Guicheng gritted his teeth and pointed at the dragon-driving hoop with his right hand. Roar! With a dragon roar, the illusory dragon expanded once again and charged towards Yun Guicheng's left arm. Above the dragon's head, a beam of light that resembled a sword shot into the air. The dragon-driving hoop was also very fast. The dragon shape fell a few feet in a moment, and Gu Yu's invisible sword could no longer pierce into Yun Guicheng's body. But with a wave of her hand, a piece of flesh fell from Yun Guicheng's arm, and blood immediately fell down. Boom! The dragon-repelling hoop and Gu Yu's flying sword collided. The dragon-repelling hoop slightly vibrated while Gu Yu's flying sword also flashed. Under the might of the dragon-repelling hoop, Gu Yu's figure also quietly flashed. Invisible sword? Seeing this, Yun Guicheng was shocked. Regardless of the injury on his left arm, he hurriedly pointed at the dragon-driving hoop. His spiritual power was activated again, and he fiercely flew toward the place where Gu Yu revealed herself. However, when the dragon-driving hoop flew past, there was no movement at all. Obviously, Gu Yu was no longer there. Not good. Yun Guicheng's thoughts turned very quickly. His whole body suddenly flew to the left, and he landed at the place where Gu Yu revealed herself. His right hand patted his forehead. Roar! A huge dragon roar came from Yun Guicheng's body. Then, the surface of Yun Guicheng's body flashed with crimson flames. As the flames burned, a fiery dragon 5 feet in size, like a huge coiled python, emerged. With the appearance of Yun Guicheng's fiery dragon, A faint red color appeared in the surrounding area of dozens of feet. It seemed to be the brilliance of the fiery spiritual energy of heaven and earth. A faint blazing heat turned the snow and ice underground into flowing water in a moment. Withdraw, Yun Guchong stood in the air majestically. The wound on his left arm quickly healed. As Yun Guichong waved his hand, the dragon-driving hoop fell into his hand. Buzz, with a buzzing sound, the dragon-driving hoop in Yun Guichong's hand, without the activation of his spiritual power, increased by a few feet. The fierce dragon shape became even more ferocious. Go! Yun Guichong's eyes flashed red. He swung his right arm, and the dragon-driving hoop flashed brilliantly in the air. With a fierce force, it smashed somewhere in the air to the right. Boom! The brilliance in front of the dragon-driving hoop flashed, and a sword light appeared. It was the sword light that blocked the dragon-driving hoop. Then, the sword light flew up diagonally. Obviously, Gu Yu's invisible sword could not resist the great power of Yun Guichong's dragon-driving hoop. Where do you think you're going? Yun Guichong's body flashed with flames, and he rushed to the place where Gu Yu was sent flying. With the movement of Yun Guichong's body, the fiery dragon body also slowly moved. Woo! The dragon-driving hoop roared again. Gu Yu's invisible sword was forced out of its sword shape by Yun Guichong again. With the appearance of the invisible sword, Gu Yu's somewhat astonished face was revealed along with his barely stabilized body. Obviously, Gu Yu did not expect Yun Guichong to have such a powerful fiery dragon body. Moreover, Yun Guichong's strength had already exceeded the cultivation of the middle stage of foundation establishment. Within the range of Yun Guichong's body, Gu Yu's biggest reliance was suddenly lost. Go! Since the invisible sword was useless, Gu Yu did not say anything. The flying sword in his hand flew out again. The small flying sword spun in the air, and countless white snowflakes gushed out. The sword light was the 6 petals of the snowflakes. The purity of ice and jade was Gu Yu's nobility. Chapter 2556. Haha, ignorant sword cultivator. Do you think that close combat is your world? Yun Guichong laughed without hesitation. He waved his hand and the dragon-repelling ring turned into a ring in front of him, generating a suction force to resist the sword light. The flame dragon's celestial body raised its head and roared. The faint red color around Gu Yu suddenly deepened. Wisps of red fire appeared and surrounded Gu Yu along with the sword intent. Gu Yu's body flashed with a white brilliance. While resisting the red fire, the fluttering snowflakes also melted in the blazing red fire. Why is this cultivator's celestial body so powerful? Gu Yu was shocked. It's even more terrifying than the terrifying phoenix. Moreover, this cultivator has the flame physique. In this area, my ice snow sword intent is restrained everywhere. Gu Yu thought. Seeing that the snowflakes melted by the red fire had already entered the invisible sword, she did not dare to hesitate. She hurriedly waved her hand and the invisible sword quickly fell into her hand. A burning sensation was transmitted from the invisible sword to her hand. Hiss! Gu Yu could not help but gasp again. Kill! Yun Guichong waved his hand as if commanding the 3 Huanhua sect disciples who had trapped Zhong Haoren and the other 4. At the same time, his flame dragon celestial body raised its head and roared. The dragon-repelling ring danced again and turned into a dragon rushing towards Gu Yu. How could Gu Yu not know that the situation was critical? She hurriedly urged the sword origin in her body. The sword light around her body also flashed rapidly. The invisible sword suddenly turned into a rainbow, carrying Gu Yu to rush out of the red fire area. Gu Yu knew that as long as she rushed out of this area, she would immediately become invisible. Yun Guichong and the others would not be able to find her. However, Yun Guichong's face showed a hideous smile. The red in his eyes became more intense. The red fire area around Gu Yu increased again and the flame became brighter. When the disciples of the Huanhua sect received Yun Jiechong's order, without saying a word, one of the disciples formed an incantation gesture and trapped Zhong Haoren and the others. Another disciple who held a fire bead pointed his finger. The fire bead that had been suspended in midair suddenly enlarged, emitting countless sparks that were about to fall. At such a critical moment, Xiaohua still hasn't arrived at the scene. He can ignore Gu Yu's life and death, but Zhong Haoren has an old relationship with Xiaohua. Xiaohua even made a move on his path of growth. How could Xiaohua just ignore it? A powerful divine sense swept down from the sky and locked onto everyone. Then, a cold snort was heard. "How dare you?" Ah! This voice seemed to come from very far away, but in everyone's ears, it was extremely shocking. It was as if the voice was whispering into their ears, and they even felt a tremor coming from the bottom of their hearts. The fire pearl couldn't help but stop in midair. Yun Guichong's fire dragon celestial body also stopped quietly. The ferocious dragon lifted its head slightly and stared at the sky in the distance. There seemed to be an aura that terrified it. Yun Guichong raised his red eyes, and a trace of surprise flashed across his handsome face. He was really looking in the same direction as the fire dragon celestial body. Yun Guichong had already sensed the strength of the divine sense and knew that the cultivation of the newcomer was extremely strong, but he still waved his hand and ordered. Yes. The disciple of the Huanhua sect hesitated for a moment and pointed his finger again. The fire bead flashed again and was about to be activated by the disciple's incantation. But at this moment, 2 green and red sword lights flashed from the sky thousands of feet away. These 2 sword lights interacted with each other and chased after each other. They were as fast as meteors, and the distance of thousands of feet was covered in the blink of an eye. Moreover, among the green and red, the dark red color was particularly enchanting. A kind of fear that made everyone's heart tremble shrouded the entire area. Roar! Yun Guichong's fire dragon celestial body was the first to realize that something was wrong. It raised its head and let out a long roar. The entire light red area was filled with brilliance, and the small fire light from before flashed again. Buzz! The 2 sword lights hummed together and suppressed the roar of the fire dragon's celestial body. One sword light pierced toward the flashing fire bead, and the other toward the fire dragon's celestial body. Boom! The green and red sword light in front of the head hit the fire bead first. The fire bead flashed with extremely bright brilliance, and then it was quickly annihilated. A hot and strong wave of air rushed out from the fire bead. Then, with a crisp cracking sound, a crack appeared on the fire bead. The crack spread rapidly and almost covered the entire surface of the fire bead. On the fire bead, a small flying sword flashed and appeared. Puff! The disciple who took out the fire bead spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was so weak that he was about to fall to the ground. Obviously, his primordial spirit was severely injured. Fortunately, the disciple next to him was quick enough to support him. As for the second green and red sword light, it fell directly in the light red area and pierced toward the fire dragon's celestial body on top of Yun Guichong's head. In the light red area, the green sword light became brighter and brighter. It was like a bolt of lightning that split the light red area. Although the sword light was not as swift as before and seemed to have sunk into mud, the green light was still incomparably sharp and unstoppable. In a breath's time, it pierced through all obstacles and arrived in front of the fire dragon's celestial body. Along the way, all the bright crimson flames were cut apart by the sharp sword intent, and all the flames were extinguished like candles in the wind. Roar! The green and red sword light pierced into the fire dragon's celestial body. It seemed that the sword light went through it as if it was nothing, but the celestial body's shadow was wailing as if it had been seriously injured. Even Yun Guichong felt the throbbing deep in his heart. The fire dragon's celestial body could not hold on any longer and slowly disappeared into his body. With the disappearance of the fire dragon's celestial body, the light red area of more than 100 feet immediately disappeared. Gu Yu, who was trying her best to escape, became invisible in the light red area. Go! Yun Guichong did not hesitate. He pointed his finger at the dragon-repelling hoop that could not resist the sword light. The dragon circled around his body, and his body leaped into the air and flew toward one direction. The 2 uninjured Huanhua sect disciples were already frightened. When they heard Yun Guichong's order, they had already activated the flying technique to pull the seriously injured disciple. Like birds that were startled by the twang of a bow, they followed Yun Guichong's back and fled. As for their magic weapons, they had already retracted the green and red sword light that broke the fire pearl before Yun Guichong's order could attack. It seemed that they were already prepared to escape. They knew that their magic weapons were no match for the green and red sword light. Of the two sword lights, one circled above the heads of Zhong Haoren and the others, protecting the five of them. The other sword light chased after them like a poisonous snake. However, it only chased for a few hundred feet before it flew back and quietly floated in the air. 1,000 feet away from the green and red sword light, Gu Yu revealed her figure. Her eyes were vigilant and puzzled as she looked at the small sword in the air. That invisible sword was still in her hand, and she did not relax at all. However, Gu Yu's divine sense had already swept out in the direction where the two sword lights came from. However, after such a long time, she still did not see any figure coming. She was frightened, and at the same time, there was a trace of expectation. A moment later, she saw a figure dressed in camouflage flying over from the distant sky. She could not see clearly whether it was a swordsman or a cultivator. However, Gu Yu had already distinguished from the divine sense that shrouded this place. This person who came from afar was definitely not a swordsman. Gu Yu hesitated for a moment and looked at the flying sword that was still in the air. At this time, there was no longer any evil spirit. The green and red sword light was restrained, like a small grass that grew there. Gu Yu's heart was slightly calmed. She put the invisible sword into her sleeve and quietly hid it. She stood in the air with her hands folded. As for Zhong Haoren and the others, they climbed up from the ground. They tidied up their robes and stood there respectfully, quietly waiting. The cultivator dressed in camouflage seemed to be flying very slowly. However, it seemed slow but was actually very fast. The distance of a few li was quickly covered. When the cultivator landed in the air, the two green and red flying swords flew in front of the cultivator. The cultivator stretched out his hand and entered the swords. "Many thanks to Senior for saving our lives." Zhong Haoren and the others could not distinguish the cultivator's face. However, they knew that he was at least a Jindan senior. How could they dare to be negligent? They hurriedly bowed and saluted. They also reported their names. In addition to Zhong Haoren, the other 4 10th level Qi refining disciples were also from Zhongling Mountain Village. The cultivator dressed in camouflage was naturally Xiaohua. "And you all get up." Xiaohua's voice was somewhat ethereal. It was impossible to tell whose voice it was. "What is going on? Why did the Huanhua sect disciple kill you all just now?" Seeing that the camouflage cultivator did not ask the distant Gu Yu, but instead asked him first, Zhong Haoren hurriedly took a few steps forward and explained the sequence of events. Finally, he smiled bitterly and said, "Junior naturally did not know that the Ganoderma horse had been injured by the Huanhua sect disciple. I only thought that it was Junior's doing. If the Huanhua sect disciple had examined the Ganoderma horse with me, I would have definitely returned the Ganoderma horse to them. However, I did not expect that they would use a magic weapon to kill me. If it were not for that girl, I would have already died. Moreover, they knew that I was a disciple of the Dao sect, yet they still wanted to accuse me of a crime and kill me. Nothing more than taking a fancy to this Ganoderma horse." Xiaohua glanced at the Ganoderma horse imprisoned by the confinement talisman and said coldly, "This Ganoderma horse is at least a 10,000-year-old Ganoderma. Moreover, because of the special spiritual energy in the place, it can form a weak spiritual intelligence. It is beneficial to the cultivation of swordsmen and cultivators. How could they not be jealous?" Speaking up to here, Xiaohua slanted his eyes at Zhong Haoren and said, "This Ganoderma horse is already in your hands, can you still return it to them? Not to mention the Huanhua sect disciple, even this old man, doesn't believe it." Zhong Haoren's expression was calm as he said with a smile, "There are countless strange objects in the world, and the ones that can help this junior's cultivation are even more numerous. However, these strange objects are born from heaven and earth, and are nurtured by heaven and earth. They are not this junior's personal belongings. If this junior is fated to obtain them, then it is this junior's fortune. If this junior is not fated to obtain them, then it is also this junior's fortune. This junior only takes what belongs to this junior, and is not willing to sully this junior's cultivation with other people's belongings. Chapter 2557. Hee, who doesn't know how to say beautiful words? Xiaohua praised in his heart, but then he sneered, "You go and see if that Ganoderma horse is injured. If it is, then it belongs to Huanhua sect and not you." Yes, this junior understands. Zhong Haoren's expression was very indifferent. He waved his hand and the Ganoderma horse fell into his hand. After he scanned it with his divine sense, he smiled and said, "Senior, this Ganoderma horse really has a wound from a fire-type magic weapon. I'm afraid it was done by Huanhua sect disciples just now. This thing was not made by this junior alone. Senior, please deal with it." Seeing Zhong Haoren respectfully hand it over, Xiaohua rolled up his sleeve and the Zoisha horse disappeared without a trace. As for the 4 aura refining disciples behind Zhong Haoren, their eyes flashed with a trace of reluctance, but they immediately disappeared without a trace. "What are you looking at?" Xiaohua turned his head and looked at Guyu, who was 100 feet away, and said coldly, "Now is the time of the war between Dao cultivators. As a cultivator, it's normal for me to kill you. If Senior wanted to kill this junior, why wait until now?" Guyu was not afraid. He raised his head and replied, "Moreover, Senior is at least a middle gold core stage cultivator. Can you kill this junior without caring about your face?" Xiaohua quietly stood in the air, seemingly thinking about something, but after a moment, he laughed again. "Haha, you're right. Why didn't this senior take advantage of the situation to kill you just now? Now that you ask these questions again, who wouldn't answer?" Until he heard this sentence, Gu Yu's heart fell to the ground. "Senior, thank you for saving my life." At this time, Gu Yu also bowed and thanked him. "No need to thank me." Xiaohua waved his hand. This senior was just doing it casually. However, this senior is also a bit strange. "You, a swordsman, why did you suddenly help these Zhongling Mountain Village disciples? Could it be that you have a relationship with Zhongling Mountain Village?" "Senior," Gu Yu whispered, "this junior doesn't know about Zhongling Mountain Village, nor do I know these cultivators. I was just passing by and saw Huanhua sect disciples attacking them. I felt it was unfair, so I helped." "That's strange." Xiaohua felt a little strange, but he immediately thought of the inexplicable words that Gu Yu had said in the 7 Extremes mountain range. Thus, he asked, "This old man saw that you were using the formless sword. Are you the formless sword Gu Yu that was widely rumored in the great battle?" When Gu Yu heard this, her face changed greatly. Biting her lips, she nodded and said, "Junior is indeed Gu Yu." Junior didn't think that Senior would actually know Junior's name. "You don't have to be afraid." Xiaohua said, "Even though this old man hates sword cultivators, I also know that some sword cultivators are of noble character. This old man will definitely not bully the weak." "Thank you, Senior. However, according to what I know, the invisible sword has killed many Foundation establishment cultivators with the invisible sword. She seems to be a vicious and merciless swordswoman. How come you actually saved several qi refining cultivators today?" Xiaohua asked very strangely. This Gu Yu hesitated for a moment and said with some embarrassment, "It's not that Junior is unwilling to tell Senior the reason, but it involves Junior's privacy, so forgive Junior for not being able to explain in detail." "Say it. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it." Xiaohua nodded. "I'll let Senior know," Gu Yu thought for a moment and said, "Junior participated in the Dao Cultivator War, and just like Senior said, I was ruthless. Whenever I encountered a cultivator, I wouldn't let them go. Junior even led a group of my Void Heaven Sword School's Bright Sword disciples to ambush and kill all the cultivators I encountered. However, not long ago, when Junior was killing a cultivator, he actually saw through my weakness and cut off Junior's right arm in one fell swoop, taking Junior's invisible sword away. However, when Junior was disheartened and was waiting for that cultivator to kill Junior, that cultivator actually did something that Junior couldn't even dream of. He actually returned Junior's arm and invisible sword to Junior. Not only that, but he also put a rare immortal pill into Junior's mouth. If it weren't for that immortal pill, Junior's arm wouldn't have recovered so quickly and so well. Since then, Junior realized that cultivators are far from the rumors of my sword domain swordsmen. They are all shameless people who love to kill. Junior even thought about it carefully and felt that this Dao cultivator war was really boring. Whether it is a swordsman or a cultivator, they are all cultivators and should focus on cultivation. These killings can only affect one's sword heart and Dao heart, and can only be obstacles on our path of cultivation. All the cultivators and swordsmen who participated in the war were chess pieces in the hands of nascent soul cultivators and sword transformation cultivators. They are all innocent and should not die. Therefore, Junior made an oath to never kill a cultivator in the war. Unless that cultivator wants to take Junior's life. Guyu said without concealing anything. It seemed that this thing that others thought was inconceivable was very common in her eyes. What? There is actually such a strange thing? Even Xiao Hua, the instigator, was shocked when he heard Guyu's words. That day when he returned the invisible sword to Guyu, it was purely a kind of instinct. To put it bluntly, that was the true nature of a man. Seeing a woman who met his eyes, that kind of care from the bottom of his heart, a kind of unbearable disturbance. Moreover, at that time Xiao Hua ruthlessly chopped off Guyu's arm. It was simply a kind of blasphemy to Guyu's beauty. Xiao Hua naturally gave Guyu a Wu Tsong pill, hoping that it could compensate him for destroying a kind of beauty. However, Xiao Hua never thought that his Wu Tsong pill was different from the rest. In the eyes of sword cultivators who lacked medicinal pills, to say that it was an immortal pill, it was absolutely not inferior. Guyu had already raised Xiao Hua's seemingly casual action to a certain height, even to the extent that she obtained the principle of compassion for the world. It couldn't be said that Guyu's thinking was right. However, in this dangerous battle, even Qin Jian was killed by Xiao Hua. Guyu was just a little drawing swordsman. How much certainty did she have to protect herself? Such a delicate and pretty girl with such noble and pure thoughts in her heart, in the battlefield where hundreds of thousands of sword cultivators and Dao cultivators were fighting, I'm afraid only death awaits her? Little girl. Xiao Hua sighed. That cultivator may not be as kind as you think. Perhaps he is drooling over your beauty. Guyu's face blushed as she lowered her head and said, that cultivator is our swordsman's great enemy. The bounty offered by the sword transformation masters is extremely heavy. How could he possibly covet this junior? Xiao Hua, who was under the bewilderment, was extremely embarrassed. He merely spoke casually and even wanted to change some of Guyu's meaningless good thoughts. However, Guyu actually asked and didn't answer. What great enemy? No matter how he listened, it didn't seem to be an answer to Xiao Hua's question. In this way, Xiao Hua had some suspicions of ambiguity. If it was before, he could still lift the bewilderment, but now it was absolutely impossible. Cough cough. Xiao Hua coughed twice and didn't know what to say. After thinking hard for a while, he said, Guyu, your good heart is also what we swordsmen think. But since it was sword cultivators who started the war, we cultivators can't not fight. This old man is very gratified to be able to see such a righteous swordsman like you. Moreover, this old man also hopes that there will be more and more swordsmen like you. This way, this kind of meaningless war won't continue. Not only swordsmen, even us cultivators won't have to die here for no reason. AI, it's difficult. Guyu sighed and didn't say much. According to what this old man knows, that female sword cultivator called Zhang Yutong has already returned to Huan country. Moreover, she wasn't captured by our Dao sect cultivators. If there are no accidents, she will have some influence on this war, right? Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment and said, Is that so? Guyu was startled. A trace of surprise flashed through her lively eyes as she said curiously, This junior has never heard of such a thing. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. It had been a long time since he met Zhang Qingxiao. How could Zhang Yutong not have arrived at the Clear Sword sect? Moreover, with Zhang Qingxiao's ability, how could there be any accidents on the way? Perhaps Zhang Yutong has returned to my sword domain, but there is still no news of Zhang Yuha. The Clear Sword sect, Won't let this matter go? Gu Yu hesitated for a moment and almost blurted it out. But after saying that, she was shocked. Even if it was her fellow disciple, she couldn't casually say such words. How could she easily believe the other party now? Although the other party had just saved her, he was after all a Tao sect cultivator. Senior, thank you for saving my life. If Senior doesn't have any other instructions, this junior will take her leave. Gu Yu didn't dare to stay any longer and hurriedly bowed. And it's nothing. Xiaohua flicked his sleeves and said with a smile, however, this old man still wants to ask. What are your plans now? Why did you suddenly fly here? Gu Yu really wanted to fly away, but after hearing Xiaohua's question, she had to stop and say with an apologetic smile, this junior fought in the 7 Extremes mountain range. I didn't even use my sword, but my sword cultivator was defeated. A swordsman blamed this junior, but my fellow disciple couldn't protect this junior, so I had to, this old man understands. Xiaohua nodded. He knew that Gu Yu's independence had been rejected by the sword cultivators, so he couldn't help but feel pity for her. This junior wants to come to the sword tomb to see the gorgeous purple jasmine flowers. Then, I will return to the Void Heaven Sword School and concentrate on cultivation. I will no longer pay attention to this meaningless battle. Gu Yu said, sighed, and flew away again. Little girl, wait a moment. Xiaohua hurriedly called out when he heard that Gu Yu wanted to go to the sword tomb. Senior, do you have any other instructions? Gu Yu had no choice but to stop again. Where is the sword tomb? If Xiaohua wasn't embarrassed before, he really wanted to go with Gu Yu. At least he wouldn't get lost, but how could he invite a beauty to go with him? Senior wants to go to the sword tomb? Gu Yu was somewhat curious, but seeing that Xiaohua didn't answer, she pointed to the north. There was indeed a lot of deviation from the direction Xiaohua was flying in. In fact, the sword tomb is not the name of a place, but a large area. Senior only needs to fly straight to the north. You don't need a specific location. Plus, they're within 1,000 miles, the blood of cultivators and swordsmen is everywhere. Who knows how many lives have been lost? Chapter 2558. At this point, Gu Yu hesitated a little and reminded, however, the sword tomb is not suitable for cultivators to go. If Senior goes there, you have to be careful. And this old man knows. Xiaohua nodded. Then this junior will take her leave. Gu Yu urged the flying sword again. Wait. Xiaohua's mind moved and said urgently. Gu Yu frowned, but she didn't dare to flare up. She only asked, does Senior have any other instructions? This old man wants to ask, you blocked Huan Hua Sec's magic weapon. Do you have other thoughts? Xiaohua asked with a smile. Gu Yu didn't understand. Xiaohua was wearing a camouflage robe, so Gu Yu didn't know where he was looking. This junior really doesn't have other thoughts. Gu Yu shook her head. Then the Ganoderma horse? Xiaohua pointed his hand and asked, you don't have any thoughts? Thank you Senior for reminding me. Gu Yu smiled sweetly and innocently. Junior indeed didn't think so much at that time. But if Senior wants to bestow a reward, it would be impolite for this junior to refuse. This item is also beneficial to my sword cultivation. Yes, now the Ganoderma horse was in Xiaohua's hands. Xiaohua mentioned it at this time. Of course he has the intention to reward her. Can the Ganoderma horse be eaten directly? Xiaohua asked, or does your sword cultivation have a special secret technique? Gu Yu pursed her lips and smiled. Senior's idea is wrong. This junior needs this Ganoderma horse to refine pills or make medicine. Eating it alone is not good. It's even a waste of natural resources. Xiaohua hesitated. There were many spiritual herbs in his space. Not to mention 10,000 years old, 100,000 years old, 200,000 years old, but these spiritual herbs didn't have any spiritual wisdom. He was somewhat reluctant to destroy this Ganoderma horse. Seeing Xiaohua hesitate, Gu Yu immediately understood and smiled apologetically. Senior only needs to bestow some juice, there's no need to take the Ganoderma horse's life. Good. Xiaohua also understood and was about to take out the Ganoderma horse, but his heart was moved again. He turned his head and asked Zhong Haoren, when you use the Ganoderma horse, is it also the same? Alright, I'll let Senior know. Zhong Haoren listened for a long time. When he heard Xiaohua suddenly ask him this question, he immediately bowed and said, that is indeed the case. One of Junior's senior apprentice sisters. Previously, due to a lucky coincidence, she obtained a heaven mend pill. Relying on this spirit pill, she reached foundation establishment in one fell swoop, and her cultivation base was extremely fast. Junior and the others obtained a pill formula that can be used to refine a different type of spirit pill. Although this spirit pill can't compare to the heaven mend pill, for us. No need to say any more. Xiaohua nodded and looked at Guyu. What Zhong Haoren said, do you know? Yes, this Junior understands. Guyu's eyes lit up as if she understood something from Xiaohua's words. She hurriedly nodded and said, although the Dao Sec's heaven-mending pill is used to mend meridians, it is also extremely beneficial to the physique of us sword cultivators. Even if this Junior took the juice of the Ganoderma horse, the medicinal pill refined would still be inferior to the heaven-mending pill. If Senior has a medicinal pill similar to the heavenly mending pill, Junior can refuse the Ganoderma horse as a reward. Ah, what a smart lass. Xiaohua laughed heartily. With a wave of his hand, he took out a jade bottle and threw it to Guyu. This old man had just thought of it and you could already sense it. You are indeed a dragon among sword cultivators. Many thanks, Senior. Guyu received the jade bottle and was extremely excited. She hurriedly thanked him, but when she opened the jade bottle, she frowned again. This ugly pill was a far cry from the heavenly mending pill that she knew of. However, the runes on the medicinal pill had a faint brilliance and its essence was so restrained. It made her intuition tell her that this medicinal pill was not ordinary. Ah, little lass, if you don't want it, then this old man will not give it to you. Xiaohua laughed heartily when he saw the situation. This old man saw your benevolent heart and also saved the Zhongling Mountain Villa's disciple. That's why I gave this item to you. Guyu was enlightened and no longer hesitated. She hurriedly kept the jade bottle and bowed. This Junior thanks Senior for the generous gift. This Junior has obtained this medicinal pill. In the future, when my cultivation is successful, I will definitely remember today's matter and also remember this Junior's oath. Good. Xiaohua said with a smile. The heavenly Tao is in the human heart. Whatever you say, the heavenly Tao is listening. You have a kind heart and the heavenly Tao is kind. This is the will of the heavens. You don't have to thank me. Yes, this Junior understands. This Junior will take her leave. Guyu said goodbye again. Right. Xiaohua patted his forehead again. Guyu did not frown this time. She was very happy and laughed. Senior, do you have any other instructions? It turned out that when Guyu said goodbye, her figure did not move. She seemed to know that Xiaohua would speak again. Ha! Xiaohua laughed again. He patted his storage bag and took out a jade bottle. Little lass and this old man are fated. This item is for you. However, do not mention it to others. What is this? Guyu took the jade bottle. It was another ugly medicinal pill. She really did not understand. Face-retaining pill. Xiaohua knew that Guyu might not know about the auction in Sky Patrol City. He could only transmit his voice. What? This is a face-retaining pill? As calm as Guyu, when she heard that she had a face-retaining pill in her hand, she also exclaimed. She had long lost her usual calmness. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He transmitted his voice to her. Wasn't it to let her keep quiet? Even if there were only Zhong Haoren and the other 4 people around, this face-retaining pill was very likely to be related to the rejuvenation pill. Xiaohua did not want to leave any clues behind. And this is the item. Xiaohua said with a smile. This old man was in Tongmu City more than 10 years ago. I competed with the people and bid for this item. However, this old man has no use for it. Today I will give it to you. Alas, youth is fleeting, brilliance is hard to stay. I hope this little lass can stay pure forever. Many thanks, Senior. Guyu's face was slightly red. However, the shyness in her eyes could not suppress the surprise in her eyes. If Xiaohua and the others were not here, She was afraid that she would have swallowed it in one gulp. "All right, little lass, you can go now." Xiaohua saw that Guyu actually stopped in midair and still did not leave. He said with a smile, "This old man does not have any more good things here. Yes, this junior is truly grateful to senior. Only I do not know." Guyu summoned up her courage and said, "Only, I do not know if senior can bestow a name." Obviously, Guyu was truly grateful. "No need." Xiaohua opened his mouth and said, not transmitting his voice, "You and I have met by chance. Moreover, there is a difference between Dao and sword. I am afraid that we will not meet again in the future. Whether or not I know your name has nothing to do with it." Guyu's face was full of disappointment. Biting her lips, Xiaohua's unusually young face inexplicably appeared in her mind. It seemed that from the moment she saw his battle, the trajectory of her life had already changed. These words, even if it was said by Xiaohua, it was also extremely appropriate. "This junior is leaving." Guyu hesitated. She was about to urge her body to leave, as if she was expecting Xiaohua to call her again. "Be careful on the road." Xiaohua no longer spoke to urge her to stay. "Many thanks, senior." Guyu's face showed a trace of disappointment. I forgot." Just as Guyu flew for about 10 feet, Xiaohua's gaze swept across the ground where Zhong Haoren's flying sword was destroyed by the Huanhua sect disciple. Suddenly, his heart moved and he hurriedly said, "Little girl, please wait." "Yes, senior. Do you have any other orders?" Guyu cheerfully flew back. Unexpectedly, she was extremely happy. The last sentence. Xiaohua pointed his finger at Zhong Haoren and said, "This is Zhong Haoren from Zhongling Mountain Village. You two meeting today can be considered as fate." Moreover, this old man observed that Zhong Haoren also practiced flying swords. "If there is any opportunity in the future, you two can learn from each other. How about it?" Guyu's face showed slight astonishment. There was also a trace of disappointment. Looking left and right at the 5 people, she nodded and said, "Since this is senior's order, if there is an opportunity in the future, this junior can give some guidance. Mrs. Life-Saving Grace, this Zhong will never forget it." How could Zhong Haoren not understand? He hurriedly bowed and said, "However, this Zhong's cultivation is shallow and it is difficult to repay. Now I can only remember it in my heart and hope that there will be an opportunity in the future to repay." "No need." Guyu flicked her sleeve and said, "This senior has already repaid the favor of saving you all. If there is an opportunity in the future, you can come to the Void Heaven Sword School. This sword will definitely fulfill her promise to the senior." Immediately, Guyu looked at Xiaohua and said, "This junior will be leaving now," and Xiaohua smiled and said, "This old man has nothing else to do. Little girl, quickly go back." Sure enough, this time, Guyu flew for several hundred zhang. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't call for her, Guyu had no choice but to urge her invisible sword to quickly fly away. Junior Zhong Haoren once again thanked senior. After Guyu left, Zhong Haoren knew that a mere sword cultivator could obtain so many benefits from this senior. He and the others were cultivators of the Dao sect, so how could they not benefit from this senior? He immediately bowed and thanked him again. The 4 10th layer Qi refining disciples also hurriedly bowed. Strange. Xiaohua looked at Zhong Haoren and asked, "Haoren, this Xiao remembers that you didn't practice flying swords before? Why did you suddenly use a flying sword?" "Ah?" When Zhong Haoren heard Xiaohua address him so intimately, he was already greatly alarmed. When Xiaohua addressed himself as the Xiao, he almost cried tears of joy. With a voice of disbelief, he called out, "Xiao? Martial Uncle Xiao?" "Nonsense, of course it's the Xiao." As Xiaohua spoke, he removed the mist and said with a smile, "That sword cultivator was here just now. This Xiao didn't dare to be too ostentatious." Who would have thought that when Xiaohua revealed his true face, without waiting for Zhong Haoren to speak, those 4 10th layer Qi refining disciples looked as if they were struck by lightning. Their eyes emitted a crazed expression. Plop, 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 4 times in a row, the 4 of them actually all knelt on the ground and said with their heads bowed, this lowly one, Taoist Daoist Xiao." So much so that a slightly younger disciple was practically clenching his fist. His body was trembling as he shouted somewhat hysterically, "This lowly one was able to see Taoist Zhao's true face in this lifetime. Even if this lowly one dies today, I have no regrets." Another disciple also shouted, "This lowly one was just silently calling Taoist Zhao's name in my heart, and Taoist Zhao immediately flew over to save this lowly one. Taoist Zhao is indeed a supreme Taoist." Where did this all come from? Xiao Hua saw the four people lose their composure like this and was startled in his heart. He then bitterly smiled and looked at Zhong Haoren. "Haoren, what's going on?" Chapter 2559. Xiao Hua knew that he didn't use the title of Taoist Master Xiao much. Apart from Zhang Qingxiao, he only used it in Zhongling Villa. Only Zhong Haoren could explain this. Who would have thought that Zhong Haoren was also shocked? He also looked at the four people strangely, not knowing why they worshipped Xiao Hua so much. As for Xiao Hua's question, Zhong Haoren could only smile bitterly and answer awkwardly, reporting to Martial Uncle Xiao, "This junior really doesn't know." However, from their tone, I'm afraid they know about Martial Uncle Zhao's deeds. Moreover, all the people of Yunqing, Jiqing, Fanqing and other places in Meng country are indebted to Martial Uncle Zhao's grace. At this point, Zhong Haoren's heart moved and he said with pleasant surprise, "Junior understands. These aura refining disciples are indebted to Martial Uncle." Is that so? Xiao Hua was somewhat puzzled. When he was in the barren mountains of Meng country, he saw the desolation and discovered the fine seeds. Then he spread the fine seeds throughout the three countries and saved countless people. However, based on this matter, it had only been 10 years, right? Those children couldn't have cultivated to the 10th layer of aura refining all of a sudden, right? If that was the case, Xiao Hua would have eaten it himself. Why would he need to work so hard? All of you get up. Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand, hinting the four disciples to get up from the ground. As for the four disciples, except for their loss of composure when they first saw Xiao Hua, they didn't even dare to say a word. They only looked at Xiao Hua respectfully and listened to Xiao Hua ask Zhong Haoren. At this moment, hearing Xiao Hua's command, the four hurriedly got up and stood with their hands hanging down. Their eyes were filled with worship. Seeing this scene, Xiao Hua was somewhat enlightened. Just now, all of his words were directed at Zhong Haoren. These disciples didn't dare to interrupt him and simply wouldn't answer. If he were to ask them, he would have already known the answer. "What's your name?" Xiao Hua smiled and looked at the slightly tall disciple with extremely dark skin. "This junior is Fei Yunshu." The disciple was extremely respectful. He didn't slack off just because he had already introduced himself and answered word by word. "Oh, so you're a disciple of Fan City's Fei family." Xiao Hua nodded. "Taoist master knows." Fei Yunshu replied. Xiao Hua glanced at Zhong Haoren. He had killed Fei Siqing at Zhongling Mountain Villa that day, but he had let Qin Kai go. As for whether the Fei family of Ji City belonged to Zhongling Mountain Villa or Qin Kai, or whether Qin Kai had been destroyed and the Qin family of Fan City had been swallowed into Zhongling Mountain Villa, he was too lazy to ask. "How do you know this Xiao's appearance, or are you so respectful towards this Xiao?" Xiao Hua asked with a smile. Hearing Xiao Hua's question, Fei Yunshu's face lit up with excitement, and he replied respectfully, "This humble one has a statue of Taoist Xiao in his home. Although the statue's carving isn't detailed enough, this little brother can recognize the real person at a glance. This time, when I return home, I must carve the statue more vividly." "At home?" Xiao Hua frowned. "Yes, this humble one is a distant relative of the Fei family. That year, during the Great Wilderness, this humble one was sent out and didn't know that there was a disaster at home. When this humble one returned home and saw that the road was barren, I was already flustered. I thought that I would never see the 37 members of my family again. However, when this humble one finally managed to return home, I discovered that everyone in the family had eaten Taoist Zhao's rice during the disaster. That was how they survived. Every single one of them kowtowed to Taoist Zhao's statue in the morning and at night, offering incense to the statue. Xiaohua frowned and asked curiously, Fei Yunshu, you've already refined qi, why is your family still so poor? I'll let Taoist Xiao know. Fei Yunshu replied without hesitation. This humble one had only just reached the third layer of qi refining at that time, and could only enter the Fei family. Besides, our blood relations with the Fei family were too distant. This humble one had already spent a lot of money to enter the Fei family, and this humble one couldn't cultivate, so he couldn't help the family much. What? You were only at the third layer of qi refining at that time? Not only was Xiaohua flabbergasted, even Zhong Haoren was shocked. It had only been a dozen years, and this Fei Yunshu had actually cultivated from the third layer of qi refining to the 10th layer of qi refining. How could this be? This Fei Yunshu was a cultivation genius. This was all thanks to Taoist Zhao's great kindness. Fei Yunshu said anxiously, this humble one's aptitude wasn't good at that time. Even in the Fei family, I was only a third-rate cultivator. However, when this humble one returned home and saw that not only was everyone in the family alive, but there were also a few of my nephews with excellent aptitudes, an idea came to my mind. When this humble one heard my family's gratitude to Taoist Xiao, this humble one knelt in front of Taoist Zhao's statue and prayed. As a result, this humble one received Taoist Zhao's guidance. Under the condition of fasting, this humble one ate the Taoist Zhao's immortal seeds. Thus, this humble one's cultivation didn't have any bottlenecks, and I cultivated all the way to the 10th layer of qi refining. Ah? There's such a thing? Xiaohua was stunned again. Yes, this humble one didn't dare to say too much about this matter. If this humble one didn't see Taoist Xiao in person today, this humble one definitely wouldn't have revealed it. Fei Yunshu's eyes fell on Xiaohua, ignoring Zhong Haoren and the others. Xiaohua looked at the other three people. Their eyes were flickering with fanaticism, as if they were extremely respectful towards Xiaohua. Thus he asked, what about the three of you? This humble one's name is Zhong Pei, a distant branch of the Zhong family. A slightly pale disciple with delicate features hurriedly replied, this humble one's family isn't as poor as junior martial brother Fei's family. My family didn't worship Taoist Xiao before. However, this humble one was seriously injured and was stranded in the wilderness. There were some commoners there who worshipped Taoist Xiao. This humble one ate Taoist Zhao's immortal seeds, and my injuries were greatly healed. Even my cultivation had a breakthrough. Thus, this humble one asked for Taoist Zhao's statue from the commoners and hid it close to my body. Every day, I would worship it and eat a lot of rice. Thus, this humble one's cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. As he spoke, he carefully took out a silk ribbon from his neck. Sure enough, there was a small person inside. Looking at his appearance, his phoenix eyes and sword-like eyebrows were indeed somewhat similar to Xiaohua's. Granny, is this young master really that godly? Xiaohua pinched his nose. It was very strange. He really didn't think that the rice he planted in his space could actually have such an effect. You two are waiting for? Xiaohua asked again. He knew that if he didn't ask, they definitely wouldn't say anything. This humble one is Qin Ji. I live in Jiqing, but I'm not related to the Qin family by blood. Another extremely simple and honest disciple said, this humble one's experience is similar to that of senior brother Fei. However, the difference is that this humble one went home to visit his family and saw that his nephew was only 4 years old. He could actually understand the qi refining method that this humble one accidentally obtained. He could even easily draw qi into his body. However, when this humble one recommended this nephew to Jiqing, the martial uncle who tested his physique said that this nephew's aptitude was not good enough and he couldn't cultivate. Thus, this humble one asked someone to let this nephew enter Zhongling Mountain Village. Finally, this humble one found the miracle of Taoist Xiao in his home. It turned out that this nephew was born after his sister used Taoist Zhao's immortal seed. This humble one tried to use the immortal seed and worship Taoist Xiao. This humble one understands. Xiaohua nodded and asked again, then, what about the other nephews in your family? This humble one has 2 nephews. Although they are very smart, They don't seem to have an immortal fate like this nephew. Qinji said without hiding anything. What about you? Xiaohua looked at the last disciple, who was a little short and fat. This humble one's name is Zhongzhan. The disciple's face was a little red as he whispered, "This humble one has always been bad at fasting and often takes secular things from time to time." Later, this humble one was also curious. After taking Taoist Zhao's immortal seed, my cultivation improved greatly. Only then did I really worship Taoist Zhao. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua nodded slightly, waved his hand and said, "This humble one's giving of good seeds is the virtue of the heavens. The heavens borrowed this humble one's hand to save the common people. You all have this opportunity and can see the way to progress. It is also the will of the heavens. This has nothing to do with this humble one. Fellow Taoists worshipping this humble one like this really makes this humble one panic." Taoist Xiao. Hearing Xiaohua's words, Zhong Haoren was a little puzzled. However, the faces of Zhongzhan and the others changed greatly. With a few putong sounds, they fell to the ground again and anxiously said, "Taoist Xiao, are you despising this humble one? If Taoist Xiao thinks that we shouldn't cultivate and shouldn't have this opportunity, then this humble one will cripple our cultivation." Xiao Hua hurriedly raised his hand and used heaven and earth in the sleeve to cover the four people. He was really afraid that these four people would suddenly attack and scatter his magic power. This humble one only thinks that this humble one has only done some extremely insignificant things for the sake of the heavens. If other ordinary people mistakenly think that this humble one is some Taoist Xiao, then so be it. After all, they don't know the truth. Xiao Hua patiently explained, but fellow Taoists have already stepped into the 10th level of qi refining, and foundation establishment is just around the corner. And this humble one is only a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. If I were to be worshipped by you all, wouldn't I become the laughingstock of others? Taoist Xiao is lacking. Fei Yunshu was the most devout. Now that he saw Xiao Hua deny him, he couldn't help but become anxious and argued. If Taoist Xiao is a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator, how could you easily drive away a middle-stage foundation establishment Huanhua sect disciple? How could you make the sword cultivators of Huan country be respectful to you? Besides, when this humble one saw that danger was imminent, I immediately prayed for Taoist Xiao in my heart. And Taoist Xiao immediately drove his sword over. If this isn't the power of a Taoist Xiao, then what is it? Right, senior martial brother Fei is right. Qinji also kowtowed and said, "This humble one also prayed just now, hoping that Taoist Xiao would be able to rescue this humble one from the hands of these vicious Huanhua sect disciples. And if Taoist Xiao really did come, this humble one will no longer worship Taoist Xiao in the future. How can I be worthy of Taoist Xiao's rescue? This humble one can't control what others think." Fei Yunshu said sincerely, "This humble one's family of dozens of people worship Taoist Xiao in order to survive. Not allowing this humble one to worship you is impossible." Taoist Xiao. Hearing this, Zhong Haoren also knelt on the ground and kowtowed, saying, "Others don't know Taoist Xiao's divine ability, but how could this humble one not know?" Actually, this humble one was also silently praying in his heart. When Taoist Xiao appeared just now, this humble one already had some premonition in his heart. However, to be honest with Taoist Xiao, this humble one really didn't dare to believe it just now. After all, this is too miraculous. But now, it seems that this humble one and the others' piety was able to summon Taoist Xiao. In the future, this humble one will also be like them, worshipping Taoist Xiao in my heart. Chapter 2560. Haoren, Xiaohua was suddenly pushed to the altar by others. He felt somewhat uncomfortable and said with a bitter smile, "Don't you feel that worshipping a cultivator with a similar cultivation level as you is very unnatural? Moreover, no matter how high this Xiao's cultivation level is in the future, you will still have the opportunity to cultivate to this Xiao's current cultivation level, or even surpass this Xiao. At that time, will others also have to worship you?" Taoist Xiao. Zhong Haoren said sincerely, this lowly one has cultivated to this point completely by relying on Taoist Zhao's strength. This lowly one knows that without Taoist Zhao, this lowly one would still be a qi refining cultivator and would absolutely have no chance to set foot into foundation establishment. Not only that, even if this lowly one has Taoist Zhao's cultivation level, this lowly one does not have Taoist Zhao's heart, does not have the compassion of the world, and does not have the magical ability to save thousands of people from water and fire. Therefore, this lowly one can say that in this world, only Taoist Zhao can worship, even if Taoist Zhao is only a foundation establishment cultivator. As for other cultivators, even if they are nascent soul cultivators, they are only our teachers, not the Taoist we should worship. Taoist Zhao. Qin Ji and Fei Yunshu shouted, please accept this lowly one's worship. Unfortunately, these four people were restrained by Xiao Hua's heaven and earth sleeve. Although they could speak, they could not worship him. Hearing the words of the five people, Xiao Hua's heart was also shaken. The Buddhist fire in his Buddhist heart flickered slightly, seemingly echoing. Could it be that this is really a magical ability? After Xiao Hua sensed it, he was somewhat surprised. After thinking for a while, he made a decision. Damn it, if this young master continues to refuse, this young master will really be suspected of selling dog meat under a sheep's head. If this young master did not want to have a false reputation, this young master would not have mentioned his name when the people of the secular world wanted to worship him. Even when the Zhongling mountain villa and the heavenly demon sect scattered spirit seeds everywhere, this young master would not have mentioned his name. Now that Taoist Zhao's name has been spread out, and there really are people coming to worship this young master has to pretend to push them out. Is this interesting? Forget it. Xiao Hua made a decision. He immediately waved his Taoist robe and laughed loudly. This Xiao is wrong. The human heart is the most back. The common people are the heavenly Tao. Since the heavenly Tao wants to borrow this young master's hand to save the common people, this young master. What's the harm? Thank you, spiritual master Xiao. Seeing Xiao Hua agree, Zhong Haoren and the others were overjoyed. They kowtowed 9 times before standing up. Good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands, took out 5 jade bottles, and handed them over to Zhong Haoren. You can't just greet me for nothing. Here, each of you will get 1 heaven-mending pill. Thank you, spiritual master. Zhong Haoren was overjoyed. He respectfully stepped forward to receive it and then distributed it to everyone. How could Fei Yunshu and the others not know what the heavenly mending pill was? Seeing that Taoist Master Xiao, whom he regarded as a deity, had once again bestowed him with a spirit pill, his heart was filled with boundless gratitude. Choked with sobs, she couldn't even say the word, thank you. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly when he saw Fei Yunshu and the others shed tears of gratitude. However, he immediately felt a trace of pride in his heart. Xiao Hua rarely gave things to others, but when he did give things to others, they were all extremely good things. If one were to think about it, which cultivator would be able to shed tears of gratitude like these 4? This wasn't just a simple shedding tears of gratitude, but rather a level of worship towards Xiao Hua as if he were a god. In the entire Dawn Rain continent, how many cultivators could do this? Xiao Hua naturally had a reason to be proud. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's heart moved again. He had an idea that he had never thought of before. Thank you, spiritual master. Fei Yunshu came to his senses and blurted out again. Yunshu. Xiao Hua said faintly, since this is something bestowed by this spiritual master, you should have it. In the future, don't mention the word, thank you. Yes, spiritual master. This little one understands. Fei Yunshu's heart trembled and he hurriedly replied. Xiao Hua swept his gaze over the others and asked, just now, you all said that the baby who ate this spiritual master's immortal seed would have excellent aptitudes, right? Yes, spiritual master knows. Qin Ji hurriedly said, this little one has specially inquired. Boy who ate the immortal seed was more flexible and intelligent than the babies this little one had seen before. But when it comes to aptitudes, right? Not necessarily. Just like this little one's nephew, his physique isn't suitable for cultivation, but his cultivation method is far superior to ordinary people. Maybe. At this point, Qin Ji was somewhat hesitant. Zhong Haoren said, "Spiritual master, this little one thinks that our Zhong family's method of physique testing might not be able to test the physique of the babies cultivated by spiritual master's immortal seed." Correct. That's exactly the case. Xiao Hua instantly understood. Now that the world's spiritual energy had changed, his immortal seed was able to adapt to the current world's spiritual energy after being cultivated by the space. Moreover, the babies who ate this rice had also adapted to the current world's spiritual energy. In this changed world's spiritual energy, it was more suitable for cultivation. Of course, the original method of testing babies was no longer suitable. More suitable testing methods for these babies were needed. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua recalled the time when he was in the Imperial Thunder sect. He helplessly said to Xiang Yang that when Zhen Lei Palace was selecting disciples, they often found that the disciples with great potential didn't have any special progress after being accepted into the sect. Some disciples who didn't perform well at that time actually advanced by leaps and bounds after being accepted into the sect. This was probably the reason. And this Xiao understands. Xiao Hua nodded and asked, "Like you, who ate rice? Are there other cultivators?" This. Zhong Haoren looked at the four people and shook his head. "This little one doesn't know. This little one has been fasting for a long time. If the four of them didn't mention it, this little one wouldn't have thought that they still ate rice. When this little one and the others ate rice, we did it behind their backs. We only ate it after worshipping spiritual master," Fei Yunshu said in a low voice. Zhong Zhan and the others replied in the same way. Although Xiao Hua was a bit curious about the relationship between worshipping him and eating rice, when he thought about how the people of the secular world did it, he was afraid that they would also do the same. As for why qi refining cultivators were so devout, Xiao Hua could only attribute it to miraculous. Forget it. Xiao Hua waved his hand. In the future, when you return to Zhongling Mountain Village, you can carefully investigate it. There are many immortal seeds there. In this Xiao's opinion, I'm afraid that all the rice has been replaced by immortal seeds. When Zhong Haoren heard this, a hint of embarrassment appeared on his face. He lowered his head and said, "You're right, spiritual master. With spiritual master's support and the Zhongling Villa's arrangement, the rice in Mongolia is being replaced by good seeds in Yunqing, Jiqing, and Fanqing. Moreover, in the secular world, these immortal seeds have been called immortal seeds. Many influential people in the secular world have gathered in Yun City in order to obtain immortal seeds from the Zhong family. Because of this, the Zhong family has benefited greatly." Zhongling Mountain Village? Zhong family? When Xiao Hua heard Zhong Haoren's words, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. It didn't seem to be the Zhongling Mountain Village, or Zhong family, that he often heard. Xiao Hua couldn't help but notice the embarrassment on Zhong Haoren's face. Sure enough, Zhong Haoren said in a low voice, "Spiritual master, if you insist on investigating around Zhongling Mountain Village, I'm afraid that this little one won't be able to complete it. However, the immortal seeds around Yun City have already been popularized. Even if this little one isn't in Zhongling Mountain Village, I can still complete it." "Haoren, what's going on?" Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and looked at the four people beside him. The four people's excited eyes revealed a trace of unwillingness, and he couldn't help but ask, "Just now, this Xiao saw the five of you alone in the vicinity of this sword tomb. It's currently a great battle between Dao cultivators. How did you all come to such a dangerous place? Zhong Zhan and the others are only at the 10th level of qi refinement. A sword cultivator can kill all of you with a single flying sword." Zhong Haoren gritted his teeth and said with extreme grievance, "I'll let spiritual master know." Actually, this little one is no longer a disciple of Zhongling Mountain Village. Earlier, what I said to that female sword cultivator was only out of consideration for this little one's face. How is that possible? Xiao Hua was even more astonished. You're already at the initial stage of foundation establishment. This is a pretty good realm in your Zhongling Mountain Village. Moreover, You and this Xiao can be considered to be fated. How could Zhong Tianyao possibly expel you from Zhongling Mountain Village? This has nothing to do with Patriarch. Zhong Haoren hesitated for a moment and explained the reason for the matter. It turned out that back then, Xiaohua killed Patriarch Fei Xiqing of Ji City's Fei family and also expelled Patriarch Qin Kai of Fan City's Qin family. Although Patriarch Zhong Tianyao of Yun City's Zhong family was poisoned, under Xiaohua's detoxification technique, he quickly recovered to his original state. When Xiaohua was comprehending the ancient refining technique, Zhong Tianyao, who was strategizing, sent troops to attack Fan City's Qin family. That's right, it was Fan City and not Ji City. Qin family's patriarch was scared to death by Qin Kai. When he saw that Zhong Tianyao didn't go to Ji City and instead attacked him first, he was even more frightened. He thought that it was Xiaohua's instructions. In the end, under Zhong Tianyao's bluff, he only resisted for a few days before hurriedly retreating. He gave half of his family's territory to Zhong Tianyao in exchange for Xiaohua's forgiveness. Zhong Tianyao naturally knew when to stop and immediately sent disciples to Ji City. A Ji City without a patriarch was practically an empty city without a city gate. The Zhong family's disciples weren't in a hurry to attack Red Crane Mountain. They only surrounded the mountain peak and sent people who were eloquent to persuade them to surrender. Long before the Zhong family came to Red Crane Mountain, the Qin family had already sent disciples over. Not only did they inform the Fei family of Fei Xiqing's death, they even revealed a ferocious face and wanted to take Red Crane Mountain into the Qin family's pocket. However, before the Qin family could succeed, they couldn't protect themselves. That was why they hurriedly retreated. Now, the Zhong family that defeated the Qin family came again. The Fei family's elders discussed slightly and reached an agreement with the Zhong family. The content of the agreement was naturally not something that Zhong Haoren could know. But since then, the Qin family had submitted to the Zhong family. This was something that all the disciples of Yun City and Ji City knew. Chapter 2561. Of course, Xiaohua had already left Zhongling Villa, so he didn't know about Zhong Tianyao's actions. Xiaohua still thought that it was good enough that the Zhong and Qin families could divide the Fei family equally. But how could he know that Zhong Tianyao's strategy was far beyond his imagination and far beyond his estimation? Since the Zhong family's strength had greatly increased, the Zhong family naturally had to strengthen their control over the Fei family and half of the Qin family. Therefore, many disciples of the Zhong family were sent out. Zhong Haoren couldn't speak, so he was treated as a mute. But after all, he was a 12th level Qi refining disciple and was also sent to guard a place in the Qin family. Zhong Zhan, Zhong Pei, and Qin Ji were his subordinates. Although Zhong Haoren was disheartened emotionally and was ridiculed by many of his fellow disciples, and even after he was sent to guard the Qin family, there were still some disciples who occasionally used his feelings for Zhong Xiuhan to mock him. But Zhong Haoren didn't care, and instead, his heart of cultivation became more and more firm. His mind also became clearer and clearer. The Qin family was the same as the Fei family, both of them were weapon refiners, and they also had some cultivation methods. After being annexed by the Zhong family, these cultivation methods naturally flowed into the Zhong family. However, the Zhong family's direct descendants and accomplished disciples didn't care about these foreign cultivation methods. So Zhong Tianyao ordered the disciples guarding the Qin and Fei family to choose the cultivation methods they liked to practice. And the place Zhong Haoren was guarding just happened to have a cultivation method for practicing flying swords, and he even found a good quality flying sword in the Qin family. The moment Zhong Haoren saw the flying sword and studied the sword art, he was immediately attracted by the piercingly cold sword qi of the flying sword. In addition, his cultivation had been stagnant for a long time, so he tried to practice the flying sword art. Who would have thought that Zhong Haoren's character was exactly suitable for flying swords? That sharp true qi carrying sword qi, under the impact of day and night, Xiaohua's seal on Zhong Haoren's acupoints was actually loosened. The moment the earth crystal Yao milk merged with his true qi was also the moment he built his foundation. Not only did Zhong Haoren easily build his foundation, he was even able to open his mouth and speak. At that time, how could Zhong Haoren not know that this was Xiao Hua's painstaking effort? Previously he hadn't complained at all, but now he revered Xiao Hua even more. Although he hadn't reached the level where he worshipped Xiao Hua daily like Fei Yunshu did, every time he thought about it, his heart filled with gratitude. Zhong Zhan and Zhong Pei were also disciples of the Zhong family who started to rise after the Qin family. Because they weren't valued in the Zhong Ling villa in the beginning, they were very close to Zhong Haoren. After Zhong Haoren built his foundation, they paid more attention to him and gave him pointers. Although he couldn't be considered a master, he was better than a master. As for Qin Ji, because he originally practiced flying sword, although his cultivation was not satisfactory, he had been practicing since he was a child. Sometimes, Zhong Haoren would even ask him. When the Great War of Dao cultivators began, the Zhong clan of Yun City was not considered a big aristocratic family. Although Zhong Tianyao was a golden core cultivator, he was not worthy of the attention of those cultivation sections. Hence, they did not transfer disciples from their clan. However, Zhong Tianyao saw the opportunity of the Great War. He knew that training disciples in the Great War could not only improve their cultivation, but also discover disciples with strategic talents. However, when Zhong Haoren saw Zhong Jinke, he was extremely embarrassed. It was very simple. Zhong Jinke was Zhong Xiuhan's dual cultivation partner. Ever since Zhong Xiuhan set foot in the foundation establishment realm, her cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds with the support of the mending heavenly pill that repaired her meridians. She had long become a fairy in the eyes of the Zhong clan's male foundation establishment cultivators. Zhong Jinke had also used countless methods to pursue Zhong Xiuhan. This was also normal. However, Zhong Xiuhan inadvertently revealed some of Zhong Haoren's matters. Although she didn't mention Xiao Hua, her apology and gratitude towards Zhong Haoren couldn't be concealed. If Zhong Jinke was a magnanimous person, then it would be fine. However, Zhong Jinke was quite scheming and narrow-minded. When he saw his former lover's follower whose cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, he had long been displeased with him. As a result, the ugliness in human nature was revealed. First, he wanted to isolate Zhong Haoren. In the case of Zhong Zhan, Zhong Pei, Qin Ji, and Fei Yunshu, the 4 Qi refining disciples who used flying swords, following Zhong Haoren, he also isolated these 5 people, dividing a team of more than 10 people into 2. This wasn't all. Over the past 2 years since they arrived at the battlefield of the Cultivation War, Zhong Jinke had constantly placed Zhong Haoren and the others in danger, making them complete nearly impossible tasks. And every time they completed a task, he would take all the credit for himself. Every 6 months, the Zhong Ling Mountain Villa would send disciples to exchange information and reward and punish everyone. However, Zhong Jinke got all the credit for the team, and Zhong Haoren got none. How could Zhong Haoren stand such a cowardly act? Although he was an upright person with a neutral character, after practicing the flying sword, he was also influenced by the flying sword cultivation method's unbending principle. He had long been cold to Zhong Jinke. If it were not for the strict rules of the Zhong Ling Mountain Villa, where everything on the battlefield was decided by the captain, he would have returned to the Zhong Ling Mountain Villa long ago. Zhong Jinke naturally saw Zhong Haoren's reaction and secretly rejoiced. 2 months ago, when Zhong Jinke sent Zhong Haoren to intercept and kill more than 10 sword gestation swordsmen, Zhong Haoren completely turned hostile. Those are 13 swordsmen at the 6th level of the sword gestation realm. Zhong Haoren gritted his teeth and said, "Although I'm at the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, I can handle 5 swordsmen at the 6th level of the sword gestation realm. But what about the 8 swordsmen at the sword gestation realm? How can Zhong Zhan and the other 3 deal with them? This is a sure-death situation." Therefore, I immediately objected and proposed that the whole team of 23 disciples of the Zhong family should attack together. However, Zhong Jinke actually said that he had other arrangements for the other disciples, and that he had a more important task. If I don't intercept and kill them, I won't listen to the captain's orders. If I delay this matter, I'll bear the consequences. It's not right for you to go, but it's also not right for you not to go. Of course, you definitely can't go. Xiaohua said with a smile. If you go, you'll definitely die. Secondly, if you come back alive, he'll ask all kinds of questions and say that it's strange that you escaped from the hands of 13 swordsmen at the 6th level of the sword gestation realm. He'll even say that you were captured by the swordsmen and became their spy. At that time, I didn't think so much. I only knew that I couldn't possibly be a match for those swordsmen. If I went, I would only be throwing away my life. Zhong Haoren honestly replied, so I turned hostile. I resolutely refused to go. Well, in fact, you might as well go. Xiaohua said again. After you went, you could have avoided the battle and let them make a fuss about you. It's better than falling into their trap. This Zhong Jinka is just a scheming person. He's a careful person. He just wants to expel you from the Zhong family so that Zhong Yuehan's heart won't be obstructed. Unfortunately, I didn't see it clearly at that time. It wasn't until half a month later that the senior brothers of Zhong Ling village came to inspect. This guy took the opportunity to report this matter to the senior brothers of law enforcement. At once, he listed several crimes of this little one, such as not listening to orders, delaying the battle, affecting the morale, and so on. He asked the senior brothers of law enforcement to expel this little one from the Zhong family. Zhong Haoren angrily said, it wasn't until that moment that this little one understood that the human heart is sinister. Of course. Xiaohua pointed his finger and said, the most sinister thing in this world is the human heart. The most fickle thing is also the human heart. The most unpredictable thing is still the human heart. You've gone through so many things and you finally understand. Yes, this disciple has thought it through these days. Zhong Haoren said with relief, it's not that Zhong Jinka didn't have the means to kill this little one, and it's not that he didn't have the opportunity to kill this little one, but he was extremely cautious and didn't act rashly. He has been provoking this little one for the past few years, and I'm afraid that he wanted this little one to make the first move so that he could take advantage of the situation. When this little one didn't do as he wished, he took a step back and wanted to expel this little one from the Zhong family. Yes, or perhaps his original goal was to expel you, so that his wife can cultivate with ease. Xiaohua nodded. After all, it's more risky for him to kill you, and it will also damage his Dao heart, so it's not worth it. The human heart. Zhong Haoren sighed. If it was a little purer, how good would that be? Then it wouldn't be the human heart. Xiaohua said, moreover, without this fickle and sinister human heart, where would there be the current Zhong Haoren? Zhong Haoren shook his head sadly. This little one was expelled from the Zhong family, but Zhong Zhan and the others were also implicated. This little one feels very guilty in his heart. Martial Uncle Zhong. Fei Yunshu and the others said respectfully, Martial Uncle's character is noble and pure, and we all admire you. Following Martial Uncle is also our choice. What Spiritual Master said just now was extremely true. If we didn't follow Martial Uncle, I'm afraid our lives would be in danger in the war. Chapter 2562. Hiss. Zhong Haoren came to his senses and took a deep breath. How did you all get here? What are your plans for the future? Xiaohua asked with a smile. We left the Zhong family's disciples and had to act alone. We wanted to return to Yun City, but it's too far away. We didn't have any spirit stones with us, so we couldn't use the teleportation formation in Sky Patrol City. If we flew back directly, I'm afraid we would die, so we were at a loss. Zhong Haoren did not hide and said, but there are many sword cultivators here, so we couldn't stay for long. We decided to go to Sky Patrol City first and see if there was anyone we knew, then find a chance to return to Yun City. At the very least, we had to stay in Sky Patrol City to save our lives. However, I don't know what happened, but in this month the number of swordsmen here suddenly increased. Our cultivation was shallow, so we had to hide and hope that the swordsmen didn't notice us. Zhong Haoren smiled bitterly. In fact, we were discovered by the illusory swordsmen several times, but they were extremely disdainful and let us go like flies. 4 hours ago, I had just escaped from an illusory swordsman. When I was fleeing in panic, I found the Ganoderma horse. The Ganoderma horse flew in front of me, so how could I not be happy? However, the Ganoderma horse was too cunning. I chased it for a long time before I could catch up with it and put the confinement talisman on it. When I was about to pick up the Ganoderma horse, the Huanhua sect disciple appeared and took out her magic weapon. If it weren't for the female swordsman, I wouldn't have been able to see her. Zhong Haoren's mouth was dry after talking for a long time. Xiaohua smiled and clapped his hands. He took out a lot of spirit fruits and gave them to the 5 people. Seeing the 5 people eating happily, Xiaohua was also very happy. Then he asked, "You said that the number of swordsmen in the vicinity suddenly increased? Many of them are illusory swordsmen? Can you tell?" "I'll let you know." Zhong Haoren ate a spiritual fruit and smiled apologetically. "My cultivation is only at the foundation establishment stage, but I've killed a few embryonic swordsmen. Naturally, I have some understanding of the swordsman's cultivation. The illusory swordsman's sword light is reserved, and their divine thoughts cut people like a blade. Of course, I can tell. That's strange." Xiao Hua scratched his head. The Dao sect's cultivators wanted to fight to the death with the Huan Kingdom swordsman near the Spirit Stone Mine. Why would so many illusory swords appear near the sword tomb? The vicinity of the sword catacomb has always been patrolled by the sword cultivators' bright sword and nurturing swordsmen. Even the city guards of the Sky Patrol City would occasionally come over. Zhong Haoren was also puzzled. But recently, the city guards of Sky Patrol City have almost disappeared. Instead, there are more swordsmen like Yu Jian. Otherwise, why would the disciples of the Zhongling Mountain Villa wander around the sword tomb? Are the other cultivation families the same as the Zhong family? Xiaohua was used to seeing cultivators from the Dao sect, so he couldn't help but ask. "Yes, all the big cultivation families will come." Zhong Haoren nodded. "I've also encountered quite a few. After all, we can obtain benefits from sword cultivators or fallen cultivators. It's extremely useful for the development of aristocratic families. However, even if we meet, we will carefully avoid each other. There won't be any great conflict. So that's how it is." Xiaohua nods. "I thought only the cultivation sects were interested in war. These cultivation families also come to participate. Although there won't be any conflict, there should be a lot of small conflicts, right?" "That's right." Zhong Haoren smiles apologetically. The Zhongling Mountain Villa has had many conflicts with some aristocratic families. The one that left the deepest impression on me is the Yu family from the fallen Gold Mountain in the country of Xi. They are extremely overbearing. When they see other aristocratic families, they will provoke them. In the past 2 years, the Zhongling Mountain Villa has had 6 conflicts with them. Every time, they suffered a great loss. Some of my crimes are that I didn't put in effort when fighting with them. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Xiaohua snorts, but he doesn't ask why the Yu family is so overbearing. Then, Xiaohua looks to the north where the sword tomb is located. He ponders and says, "Could it be that the sword cultivators have some hidden cards here?" However, that's not right. If Zhong Haoren and the others encountered it, how can the disciples of the other cultivation sects not encounter it? If I can think of it, how can others not think of it? Although the group of gold core cultivators in the discussion hall are proficient in internal strife, they should be clear about this simple logic, right? Looking at Xiaohua's thoughtful expression, Zhong Haoren turns to look at the 4 disciples. The 4 disciples seemed to understand Zhong Haoren's meaning and nodded slightly. Then, the 5 of them throw themselves on the ground again without hesitation. "Io, what are you waiting for?" Xiaohua hears the noise and immediately turns his head. He asks curiously, "If there's a problem, we can talk it out. Why make such a big fuss over nothing?" "Taoist." Zhong Haoren kneels on the ground and says with a bitter smile, "We have been expelled from the Zhong family and are already rogue cultivators. Moreover, if we are not wrong, when the Zhong family receives Zhong Jinka's message, they will definitely send disciples to find us. There is an 80 to 90% chance that they will cripple the cultivation of us 5. Even if Zhong Tianyao shows mercy for Taoist and doesn't cripple our cultivation, we will have nowhere to cultivate. We regard Taoist as a god or an immortal and are willing to serve Taoist for life. We ask Taoist to take us in. We hope Taoist can be merciful and take us in. Fei Yunshu is the most pious and has already kowtowed on the ground. Oh, wait a moment. Xiao Hua slowly nods and flicks his sleeves. The 5 of them can only stand up. Zhong Haoran, since he wants to cripple your cultivation, why didn't he do it when he expelled you? Why wait until later? Isn't it the same if he imprisons you first? Xiao Hua asks. Seeing Xiao Hua asks such a trivial question, Zhong Haoran is overjoyed. He knows that Xiao Hua has tacitly agreed to take them in. He answers with a smile, not all the disciples who were expelled by the Zhong family had their cultivation crippled. Moreover, don't we have some fate with Taoist? Zhong Jinka doesn't know, but that patrolling senior brother knows. Therefore, he doesn't dare to judge whether we have our cultivation crippled or not. What's more, the Zhong family still has to send people to keep an eye on us while we're imprisoned. If they don't, what if we lose our lives and Zhong Tianyao disagrees with Zhong Jinka's decision? Wouldn't they have to bear the responsibility? Actually, at that time, I wanted to return to Zhong Ling Villa with that patrolling senior brother to argue with Zhong Tianyao. However, the patrolling senior brother has to go somewhere else and it's not convenient for him to bring us along. I'm afraid you only thought of relying on me when you saw me just now. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Zhong Haoran nodded slightly and said without hiding anything, "You're right, Taoist. We didn't hear any news of Taoist here. We only thought that Taoist is still in Imperial Thunder Sect. How would we think of relying on Taoist? Even if we wanted to, we had to go to Sky Patrol City first. It was only when Taoist revealed his face just now that we suddenly realized. We stayed here to wait for Taoist." Ha! Well said, well said. This is fortune, this is karma. If all of you leave, then you won't have this fortune. Xiao Hua roared with laughter. Thank you, Taoist. Zhong Haoran thanked him again, but then he said with some worry, however, Taoist is now only in the late stage of foundation establishment. I'm afraid that in Imperial Thunder Sect, it's still, if it's inconvenient for Taoist. Zhong Haoran naturally knew that the threshold for cultivation sects to recruit disciples was very high. The 5 of them might not be selected. Although he said that he was serving Xiao Hua, he still had some thoughts about this in his heart. Haha, who told you that I'm only in the late stage of foundation establishment? Xiao Hua laughed and patted his forehead. The pressure on his body was released, like bamboo shoots after a rain, rising steadily. Taoist! Seeing Xiao Hua's pressure rise straight to the late stage of golden core and firmly suppressing the 5 of them, an indescribable fear came from their hearts. It seemed that the space around 100 feet around them was frozen. Zhong Haoran and the others cried out in surprise, so Taoist cultivation is already so high. Hehe, Xiao Hua smiled and slowly retracted his pressure. His realm also slowly fell until it returned to the middle stage of foundation establishment. Since Taoist already has the cultivation of golden core, then we have some connections to join Imperial Thunder Sect. Zhong Haoran was overjoyed. When did this Xiao say that he would let you enter the Imperial Thunder Sect? Xiao Hua was still all smiles as he spoke. Yes. When Zhong Haoran heard this, the corners of his mouth twitched. He was extremely embarrassed and said, "This little one is thinking too much. This little one is already satisfied to be able to serve Taoist." Haoran, Xiao Hua pointed. Do you think I'm playing with you? Taoist's meaning is? Zhong Haoran didn't understand and looked at Xiao Hua strangely. As for Fei Yunshu and the others, they didn't have the right to speak and could only listen quietly. You wait and see. Xiao Hua smiled and took out many sword slips, jade slips, and some of Li Xiubai's and Taoist bright sword arts. This is... Zhong Haoran saw so many things and was immediately stunned. When he used his divine sense to look at some of the things inside, he was wild with joy. This is the sword arts for sword cultivators, from the gestation sword to the drawing sword and the illusory sword. There's also my Dao Sect's flying sword cultivation method. Zhong Haoran stammered. There's also these. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and dozens of flying swords fell into the air. Ah? So many! Zhong Haoren and the others were dumbfounded. It seemed that the 1,000 of them didn't obtain many flying swords in these 2 years, right? With these, do you still need to join Imperial Thunder Sect? Xiao Hua asked with a smile. Of course there's no need. The 5 people looked at the flying swords and their eyes widened. They had been training in the war for 2 years and their horizons had long been broadened. They knew that these flying swords were used by 6th stage swordsmen and their quality was extraordinary. Moreover, when they heard Zhong Haoren say that there were many sword arts, they were overjoyed and even somewhat in disbelief. Although this kind of resources couldn't be compared to Imperial Thunder Sect, it was still much less compared to Zhongling Villa. However, if the 5 of them were to use it, it would be more than enough. Chapter 2563. Unknowingly, the 5 people's eyes lit up at the same time. They looked at each other and bowed. We pay respect to Sect Master. Sect Master? Xiao Hua was stunned. His surprise was not inferior to the 5 people's. He hurriedly helped them up. When did I say that I want to establish a sect? The Xiao means? Speaking up to here, Xiao Hua also stopped. Yes, his original intention was to find an inheritance for Master Bright Sword and Li Xiubai's flying sword technique. Zhong Haoren's character was upright, and he had experienced the world's tempering. Xiao Hua's test was also easily passed. He was the best candidate to accept this inheritance. When Xiao Hua saw Zhong Haoren at Zhongling Villa that day, he already had this little plan in his heart. Now that Zhong Haoren was expelled from Zhongling Villa, it was also helping Zhong Haoren. He just happened to push the boat with the current and settle his own karma. However, after listening to Zhong Haoren and the others' reminder, Xiao Hua had another thought. That's right. Since the 5 of them have sword arts and flying swords, and Zhong Haoren's cultivation is at the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, and I, on the other hand, am comparable to the late stage of the Jindan realm. This kind of strength is more than enough to establish a small sect. Not to mention that there were so many spiritual herbs, pill recipes, and other things in his space. It was more than enough to support a medium-sized sect. Zhang Qingxiao, that guy, could become the sect master of Heavenly Demon Sect. Why couldn't Xiao Hua become the sect master? Back then, Shang Huaming's sect master was only a foundation establishment cultivator. Although 100 Grass sect had many disciples, the sect master was also at the middle stage of foundation establishment. Thinking about the convenience of Zhang Qingxiao having Heavenly Demon Sect, Xiao Hua was somewhat coveting. Not to mention other things, just those dry distance pills and high thunder pills, relying on Xiao Hua alone, it would take a long time to gather them. And the other side only needed a sect master's command and someone would obediently deliver it to his hands. It was really more efficient than anything else. Grandma, make a sect to play with? Xiao Hua was somewhat moved. But immediately, Xiao Hua shook his head again. Forget it. Not to mention this young master's enemies, making a sect would increase the number of targets. Adding a few more dead people would be irresponsible to the sect's disciples. Besides, this young master's cultivation is good, making a sect? There are many matters in the sect, annoying to death. Just look at the group of old gold core cultivators in the assembly hall. Scheming against each other is really boring. The more people there are in the sect, the more it will be the same. Seeing Xiao Hua deep in thought, Zhong Haoren and the others were delighted, but their hearts were also nervous. When Xiao Hua frowned, Zhong Haoren and the others' hearts sank. Sure enough, Xiao Hua opened his mouth. Let's not talk about this matter. These cultivation techniques and flying swords, I'll give them to you. Just focus on your own cultivation. Thank you for your reward, spiritual master. Zhong Haoren put away the cultivation technique and flying sword. He looked very happy, but he was also a little disappointed. Zhong Haoren probed, Perfected one, my cultivation is shallow. If these things are left with me, if they are snatched away, it's fine. Xiao Hua said with a smile, this Xiao has already kept a copy of the cultivation technique and sword art. As for those flying swords, They are all mere worldly possessions. If you want to snatch them, then so be it. Actually, if we have more people, we don't have to be afraid of others. Zhong Haoren took the opportunity to say, "Ha, that's up to you," Xiao Hua said with a smile. Feel free to accept disciples, this Xiao won't stop you. Actually, didn't this Xiao say it just now? You can look for babies who can eat good seeds and carefully select them. Their aptitude may not be worse than the direct disciples of the cultivation sects. Perfected one. Zhong Haoren said with a bitter smile, what you said, isn't it just to establish a sect? How about we first establish a cultivation family? Why must we establish a family or sect? Xiao Hua looked at Zhong Haoren and asked. I won't hide it from Perfected One. We are now rogue cultivators. We don't have anyone to rely on in the Xiaoyu continent. We don't have any confidence in our hearts. Although we consider Perfected One as our thoughts, aren't by our side. If there is a family or sect, after all, there are many people. We can also protect ourselves. Zhong Haoren didn't dare to conceal anything and said in a low voice, moreover, Perfected One Zhao's prestige among the common people of Meng country is very high. You are a Perfected One who is worshipped. If it is like what Perfected One Xiao said just now, the heaven and earth spiritual qi will change greatly. If the descendants of these common people can adapt to the heaven and earth spiritual qi, they will become the mainstay of the Xiaoyu continent in the future. If Perfected One doesn't take advantage of this opportunity to rise and use Perfected One's prestige in their hearts, wouldn't it be a pity? This is an opportunity that is hard to come by. Could it be that Perfected One wants to be used by others? Oh! Xiao Hua's heart shook. That's right. Xiao Hua was born in a peasant family. Now that he had lost all his memories, he still didn't have any great ambitions. When mentioning cultivation sects, his first impression was that they were troublesome. He was too lazy to get involved. When he heard Zhong Haoren's words, it was as if he was suddenly enlightened. The heaven and earth spiritual qi changed greatly. Every sect was adapting to it in order to protect themselves and strengthen themselves. It wasn't just the dispute between the three countries. For example, the country of Shanghua sect and other sects began to snatch the spirit stone veins. Even this great war between Dao cultivators seemed to be because sword cultivators wanted to break into the Dao sect's territory to snatch the spirit stones. Weren't they all trying to take advantage of the heaven and earth spiritual qi? It wasn't just the spirit stones. In other aspects, cultivation sects were also changing. For example, the cultivation techniques of each sect and the method of selecting disciples had changed. They were exploring and finding a feasible way to adapt to the heaven and earth spiritual qi. And Xiao Hua himself? He really was the key to changing the Dawn Rain continent. Not to mention how mystical Xiao Hua's space was, not to mention the spirit herbs in his space, just the improved seeds from his space were the most important changes that Xiao Hua had inadvertently made for the Dawn Rain continent. Cultivators were also humans. They were also people from the secular world at the very beginning. It was only because of their outstanding aptitude that they had the possibility to cultivate. Those disciples of cultivation sects and cultivation aristocratic families had more opportunities to cultivate and enter the ranks of cultivators only because of their bloodline. Therefore, the foundation of the Dawn Rain continent's cultivation world was still the people of the secular world. Those billions, tens of billions of people of the secular world were the foundation that supported this world. And what Xiao Hua did was precisely to change this foundation. Although it was just the beginning and the number of people involved was still very small, didn't Zhong Haoren already say it? There were already many merchants who started to come to Yun City to ask for spirit seeds. In time, this improved seed would certainly cover the entire Dawn Rain continent. All the people of the secular world would have to change to eating Xiao Hua's immortal seeds. This was such a great merit. This kind of merit, not to mention the gold core cultivators in the Sky Patrol City's conference hall, even the nascent soul sect masters of the three cultivation countries couldn't imagine it. Of course, when the cultivators who ate the immortal seeds grew up, the change in heaven and earth's spirit qi would have already become the mainstream of the Dawn Rain continent. those cultivators would naturally turn into countless streams and fall into different sects. Since that was the case, why couldn't Xiaohua at the beginning of all changes, at the beginning of all the cultivation sect's attention, at the beginning of the flow of spirit qi, establish a sect? If he established a sect here at this time, it would certainly be like the great river of flowing ice valley. From small to large, it would be magnificent and even boundless in the end. In short, it could be said that this was an era where ambitious and ruthless people rose one after another, where heroes vied for supremacy, and where the winds and clouds met. Who knew how many famous people would fall here, and who knew how many nameless people would shake the world? And for Xiaohua, he saw this opportunity and seized it. It's a success. But isn't it too troublesome? After all, Xiaohua was a cultivator who comprehended the hand of karma. Once he thought about it, he immediately understood 1,000 miles and saw a lot of the future. But then he muttered again. If Zhang Qingxiao was here and understood so much, she would have already taken the bright scenic bell and knocked his head, right? Troublesome? Xiaohua's whisper fell into Zhong Haoren's ears, and Zhong Haoren was immediately enlightened. His enlightenment came a little late. He, a disciple from an aristocratic family, never thought that there would be a god in the eyes of the secular world who was too lazy to establish a sect because he was afraid of trouble. That's right, Taoist master only concentrates on cultivation. Why would he care about the trivial matters of the secular world? Zhong Haoren thought again. Then, Zhong Haoren waved his hand, and the 5 people bowed again. Damn it, what are you doing? Quickly get up. Xiaohua said anxiously. We asked Taoist Master Xiao to establish a sect. If Taoist Master doesn't allow it, we won't get up again. Zhong Haoren said loudly. Good. Get up and talk. Although Xiaohua was forced by the 5 people, he wasn't angry. He waved his hand and said, establishing a sect isn't a small matter. I admit that I don't have the ability. We will discuss it in detail. Yes, Taoist Master. Zhong Haoren was overjoyed. He looked at Zhong Zhan and the others and said, if you have anything to say, you can say it to Taoist Master. Do you see, if we force others, they will definitely be angry. Taoist Master is different from us. He definitely won't blame us. Zhong Zhan and the others were different from Zhong Haoren. They didn't dare to say much to Xiaohua and could only smile apologetically. It's not convenient here. Let's find a safe place. Xiaohua looked around and brought the 5 people to a low place. After the 5 people respectfully asked Xiaohua to sit, they sat in front of Xiaohua very respectfully. Haoren, I am now a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. You also know this. I don't know whether I can establish a sect or not. However, I'm afraid it won't be possible. Once the news of this sect is known by the Imperial Thunder sect, they will definitely send experts to exterminate it. And I can't even protect myself. Moreover, I have many enemies. These enemies are even more powerful than the Imperial Thunder sect. If I establish a sect, wouldn't I be pulling all of you into the same boat? Also, establishing a sect is not a joke. It requires a lot of manpower, especially manpower who can deal with the sect's affairs. I know what kind of person I am. The sect master. I really don't want to be. Chapter 2564. Seeing that Xiaohua still wanted to continue, Zhong Haoren hurriedly smiled obsequiously and said, establishing a sect is naturally a major event. It wasn't just what the Taoist master had said. Even the cultivation of spirit herbs, the refinement of medicinal pills, the daily lives of the disciples, and so on. All the details had to be taken into consideration. To be honest, I don't even know where to start. This humble one only came up with this idea on the spur of the moment when I saw the real person. Furthermore, I feel that this path is absolutely feasible. And continue speaking. Xiaohua knew that Zhong Haoren came from an aristocratic family and was very knowledgeable about these matters, so he nodded. Right now, there are only 5 of us. Including you, there are only 6 of us. It's laughable to talk about establishing a sect. However, don't forget that you're not alone. Behind you are all the people in Yun City, Ji City, and Fan City who have received your kindness. The descendants of these people were also the people of the sage. They are our greatest support. Good boy. This guy is really amazing. Xiaohua didn't expect Zhong Haoren to have such foresight and unconsciously nodded his head in praise. Seeing Xiaohua nod, Zhong Haoren is also happy. He bows and says, "Actually, from what I see, Taoist doesn't need to show up at all. Taoist only needs to make a call, and I don't know how many capable people will join our sect. These disciples will all work for Taoist. There's no need for Taoist to go through any trouble. Even in the early days of establishing a sect, there was no need for a Taoist master to do anything. This lowly one knows that Reverend is now a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect and will be fighting in this place. This lowly one only needs Reverend's permission, and this lowly one, and Zhongzhan and the others will return to Meng country, find a place with spiritual mountains and clear waters, and prepare everything. Reverend need not worry about anything. I feel that as long as we use the name of spiritual master, everything won't be too complicated." "Really? Is that true?" When Xiaohua heard this, he was overjoyed. Of course. Zhong Haoren smiled and said, "In Zhongling Villa, Zhong Tianyao is the patriarch. Other than some important decisions, Zhong Tianyao doesn't need to do anything else. Zhong Peiyuan, Zhong Peifu, and the others were in charge of everything. Spiritual master's reputation is so great. It's really not a big deal to find some capable people and disciples with outstanding aptitude. And when we encounter danger, Zhong Tianyao also has to step forward, right?" "That's true. If Reverend is in charge of a sect, and others want to attack, Reverend will naturally lead his disciples to defend against the enemy." Zhong Haoren nodded. I understand. This Xiao likes to beat people up the most." Xiaohua replied with a grin. "That's right." Zhong Haoren nodded. "Moreover, in this lowly one's opinion, our sect simply doesn't need to be like this. Spiritual Master's name is not prominent now, but it will definitely shake the world in the future. He will be the god worshipped by all the secular people of the Dawn Rain continent. Who would dare to touch our sect?" You're too naive." Xiaohua sneered. "If we establish our own sect without strong support, it will only be a piece of fat meat. As for the rest of the world, it's a fat piece of meat that any cultivator would drool over." "That's right. Therefore, I hope that you can be merciful and make plans to establish a sect as soon as possible to protect all the common people in the world." Zhong Haoren went along with the flow and said, "Let this Xiao think about it." After Xiaohua finished speaking, he closed his eyes and pondered. Zhong Haoren and the others didn't dare to say anything and sat quietly at the side. Xiaohua pondered for more than half a day. After thinking about it, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. It seemed that establishing a sect and leaving Li Xiubai and Spiritual Master Brightsword's orthodoxy to Zhong Haoren were essentially no different. It's just that the number of people involved would be greater, and he would bear the title of Sect Master. If this Xiao doesn't take the position of Sect Master, Haoren, what will you do? Xiaohua suddenly opened his eyes and asked. Zhong Haoren waited for half a day and unexpectedly heard Xiaohua ask this question. He almost cried and said with a smile, "Spiritual Master, the core of our sect is Spiritual Master. Without Spiritual Master, how can there be a sect?" But this Xiao's enemy is really powerful. Xiaohua hesitated. "Actually," Fei Yunshu said timidly, "Spiritual Master doesn't need to show up. Martial Uncle Zhong is the Sect Master and Spiritual Master is the Sect Master. It's also very good. As long as Spiritual Master knows that this sect belongs to Spiritual Master can support this sect at a critical time. This little one doesn't dare to be the Sect Master." Zhong Haoren turned pale with fright and hurriedly waved his hand. "If that's the case, we can give it a try." Xiaohua nodded. "Moreover, what Sect Master, it's all up to us. Haoren, for your future, and also for this Xiao's escape route, this matter of establishing a sect will be handed over to you. Zhongzhan, Qinji, Zhongpei, and Fei Yunshu, you are now the disciples of my sect. In the future, when the sect develops, you will also be meritorious subjects. Thank you, spiritual master, thank you. Zhongzhan and the others originally wanted to call him sect master, but thinking of what Xiaohua said just now, they didn't know how to address him. Xiaohua didn't explain. He scratched his chin as if thinking about something. Spiritual master, Qinji asked carefully, what is the name of our sect? Oh? What do you think? Xiaohua asked with interest. At this time, he didn't have any burden. He couldn't do anything about it. He was only the sect master in name. It was like a child playing a game. Heaven and Earth Unified Sect? Flying Sword Sect? Bronze Tomb Sect? Spiritual Master Sect? Zhong Haoren and the others were full of interest. One name after another, they really racked their brains, making Xiaohua feel warm in his heart. This seemed to be another Shang Huaming. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't nod his head, everyone was a little nervous. Fei Yunshu stole a glance at them and said softly, this little one's grandmother was old and weak, but after eating the spiritual master's immortal seed, she lived for several more years. When she was on the verge of death, she seemed to have regained her youth. Before grandmother passed away, she said that meeting the spiritual master was her good fortune, and it was also the good fortune of millions of disaster victims. The spiritual master was also a fortune saint. This little one thinks that this sect's name shouldn't be called Fortune Gate. Great. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. When he heard the names mentioned by Zhong Haoren and the others, he felt that he should have a more suitable name, or perhaps he knew of a sect's name, but he couldn't think of a name for it. When Xiaohua heard the name, Fortune Gate, he became vigilant. Perhaps he had a sect's name, but that was already in the past. Fei Yunshu's Fortune Gate hit the nail on the head and pointed out the good fortune of cultivation methods. Many thanks, spiritual master. When Fei Yunshu heard that his name was chosen by Xiaohua, his face flushed red. It was really glowing, more energetic than if he had eaten a heaven-mending pill. That's right, Fortune Gate, this is the name. Zhong Haoren's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he shouted happily, the world's fortune is in our sect. Those who enter our sect will obtain the fortune of heaven and earth. This is in line with the spiritual master's principles. When the Fortune Gate's name was decided, Zhong Haoren rubbed his hands excitedly. Fei Yunshu and the others were also happy, but then Zhong Haoren frowned and looked at Xiaohua with difficulty. Spiritual master, although you don't want to be the sect master, this little one's talent is limited, and I may not be able to be the sect master. Most importantly, Zhongzhan, Fei Yunshu, and the others' status is not easy to decide. Wouldn't it be fine if you were the master of the four of them? Xiaohua replied with a smile. Zhong Haoren smiled wryly. Spiritual master can give us pointers in cultivation, but you want this little one to give them pointers? I'm afraid I don't have the ability. When Fei Yunshu and the others heard this, their hearts beat violently, and they looked at Xiaohua anxiously. Obviously, Zhong Haoren wanted them to be apprenticed to him. Haoren, you will temporarily take the position of sect master, and all the sect's affairs will be handed over to you. Xiaohua said without hesitation, other than that, your cultivation. This Xiao has the obligation to give pointers, but now is not the right time. These cultivation techniques will have to be comprehended by yourselves. If Haoren is unwilling to be your master, then all of you can be considered to have entered my Fortune Gate on the same day, and become senior and junior brothers. Yes, this disciple understands. Fei Yunshu and the others hesitated, but Zhong Haoren agreed with a smile. Zhongzhan and the others stood up and saluted Zhong Haoren, greeting the Fortune Gate's eldest senior brother, officially establishing their seniority. Also, this Xiao has something to discuss with everyone. Xiaohua was happy to see them following the rules, but he suddenly thought of something and asked with a smile. Spiritual master, please speak. Zhong Haoren said curiously. On the Dawn Rain mainland, one's cultivation realm is the basis of seniority. As long as one's cultivation is one realm higher, they have to address you as senior. This is even more obvious in some cultivation sections. Regardless of your seniority, as long as your cultivation is fast, other disciples will have to call you martial uncle when they see you. There is no difference in seniority, this Xiao feels a little inappropriate. Xiao Hua explained carefully, this Xiao feels that in my fortune gate, regardless of cultivation realm, everyone should be addressed according to seniority. What do you all think? This. Zhong Haoren was slightly dazed. This seemed to be the cultivation world's rule, and it had always been like this. He had never thought much about it. It's like this, spiritual master. Zhong Haoren pondered for a moment, then said, there are only a few of us now, so it's easy to talk about seniority, but what if it's thousands of years later? There are tens of thousands of disciples in the sect, hundreds of thousands, or even millions. If two disciples don't know each other when they meet, how do they address each other? It should be the most convenient to talk about cultivation realm, right? Moreover, the lifespan of cultivators like us is gradually increasing, and as the number of disciples increases, it's inevitable that there will be some differences in age and seniority. How can a young Qi refining disciple be a foundation establishment old man's martial uncle? Moreover, even if there is a clear seniority in my fortune gate, there are so many cultivation sects on the Dawn Rain mainland. The seniority is very complicated, how can it be clearly distinguished? Xiao Hua was a little flabbergasted. He had just casually mentioned it and had some thoughts of his own, but he didn't expect it to be so troublesome. AI, it's reasonable to exist. Perhaps, this Xiao's thinking is too simple. Chapter 2565. Taoist Master's Thoughts Are Reasonable. Zhong Haoren smiled. If Taoist Master has such thoughts, why don't we wait until our fortune gate has someone capable in this field and let them consider it carefully? Yes, that's right. Xiao Hua smiled. This Xiao will still give you some pointers in your cultivation. Xiao Hua and the others stayed for several days. Not only did Xiao Hua check their cultivation, he also made them consume the heavenly mending pills and gave them some pointers on flying swords cultivation. Only then did he send them to the Sky Patrol City from the Sword Tomb. When they saw Xiao Hua take out the 7 possibilities sex flowing cloud flying ship, Zhong Haoren prostrated himself in admiration, while Fei Yunshu and the others felt that it was only natural. The journey to the Sky Patrol City was naturally not peaceful. They encountered several groups of sword cultivators, most of whom were around grade 6, and there were even 2 groups of illusory swordsmen. However, what made Zhong Haoren and the others flabbergasted was that all the swordsmen, without exception, were envious when they saw the flowing cloud flying ship. No matter how many people there were, they all surrounded the flowing cloud flying ship. But all the swordsmen, without exception, fled like rats. The reason they fled was because of a single sentence from Xiao Hua and a single magic art. This magic art was naturally Xiao Hua's lightning-attracting technique. Xiao Hua waved his hand, and dark clouds appeared in the sky. Crackling lightning flashed in the air. All the swordsmen fell into deep thought when they saw the lightning, and that sentence was, "A terrifying phoenix is here. If you don't want to die, quickly get out of the way." Hearing this, and thinking of Qin Jian's fate, even if Xiao Hua had a huge bounty on his head, these swordsmen were enlightened. None of them dared to stay on the spot. Taoist Master. Zhong Haoren saw this several times, and he and his companions were simply stunned. This was really inconceivable. Those swordsmen were comparable to mid-golden core swordsmen and they were scared away by Xiao Hua's words? This Xiao convinces people with virtue. Xiao Hua was immensely proud. With this unforgettable scene, Zhong Haoren and the others were even more confident about their future and the Fortune Gate's future. More than 10 days later, Xiao Hua arrived at the outskirts of Sky Patrol City. He did not go within 100 miles of the city. Instead, he stopped the flowing cloud flying ship in midair and said with a smile, "Haoren, I will send you here. There will definitely be guards from Sky Patrol City within 100 miles. You will not be harassed by sword cultivators. Nothing will happen." Many thanks, Taoist. Zhong Haoren didn't want to part with Xiao Hua and was reluctant to part with him. When will Taoist Master come to Meng Kingdom? How do we inform Taoist Master that we have chosen the spiritual mountains and rivers? Fei Yunshu and the others had seen Taoist Master Xiao in the past few days. So they had become a little bolder. They asked in a low voice, "Go ahead and do what you need to do. There's no need to inform this Xiao of anything." Xiao Hua smiled. "Once the battle is over, this Xiao will go to Passage City to take a look. With this Xiao's ability, do you think I won't be able to find you?" "Yes, disciple and the others understand." Fei Yunshu said respectfully, "We will worship Taoist every day. Taoist will naturally know." "Hee hee." Xiaohua chuckled, then took out 5 storage pouches and handed them to Zhong Haoren and the others. "These are used by my fortune gate. Take 1 each and give it to Haoren after you get to Meng Empire. Alright, if others try to snatch it, let them take it. You don't need to pester them. Remember, this is an external object, and you are the cornerstone of my fortune gate." "Yes, disciple understands." Zhong Haoren nodded. However, when they received the storage pouches and looked at the things inside, they couldn't help but feel stupefied. AI, following Taoist Master Xiao, Zhong Haoren and his companions couldn't help but feel shocked. Their faces were probably stiff from shock, right? These are all my fortune gates?" Zhong Haoren bit his lips. The sharp pain on his lips proved that he wasn't dreaming. There was no need to talk about the good seeds inside the storage pouches, the medicinal pills, and the spiritual herbs. Zhong Haoren didn't want to talk about them. That mountain of spirit stones, how could he not be shocked? Moreover, Xiaohua had clearly said that the 5 people's storage pouches were ordinary. What he saw was only 20%. Only 20%. Hee hee, this Xiao is far away in Huan country, so I can't help. You all have to work the hardest. Xiaohua nodded and said, "Moreover, my fortune gate has just been established, so these things are indispensable. Don't look at the many things inside the storage pouches. If the fortune gate is really in its embryonic form, these things may not be enough." Yes, disciple understands." Zhong Haoren and the others' hands were trembling as they carefully put away the storage pouches. "Of course, these things belong to my fortune gate. This Xiao does not wish for the disciples I value to have other selfish motives. Otherwise, this Xiao's terrifying phoenix name is not in vain." Xiaohua's tone changed as he said coldly, "Disciple does not dare." Zhong Haoren and the others hurriedly knelt on the ground. "We swear a blood oath in the name of Tao Master Xiao that if we covet the things inside the storage pouches, our souls will be devoured by the spiritual fire, living a life worse than death." As soon as these words came out, Xiaohua felt a strange feeling coming from his Buddha fire. Several drops of indistinct purplish-red beads appeared on the edge of the golden thread. Oh! Xiaohua could only sense it but not feel it. Knowing that the oath was made, he smiled and helped the 5 people up. As long as everyone does their best, when the fortune gate prospers, it will also be the time when your name shakes the world. To be honest, the things inside the storage pouches, how can they compare to your glory in the future? We still need Tao Master Zhao's guidance. Fei Yunshu and the others shed tears of gratitude. There's also this. Xiaohua comforted everyone, then took out a jade pendant and handed it to Zhong Haoren, saying, "If Zhong Tianyao comes looking for trouble, just show this to him. Also, if ordinary gold core cultivators come to stir up trouble, take this out as well. After this battle, this Xiao should have some fame, so this item should be of some use." Yes, Zhong Haoren received the jade pendant and looked at Xiaohua. Seeing Xiaohua nod slightly, Zhong Haoren immersed his divine sense into the jade pendant and saw a faint image of Xiaohua standing with his hands clasped behind his back. Zhong Haoren could vaguely see Xiaohua's face clearly, and then Xiaohua's unhurried voice sounded, "I am Xiaohua, and this is this Xiao's token. Seeing this token is like seeing this Xiao in person. If any fellow Taoist doesn't give this Xiao face and exterminates this Xiao's descendants, this Xiao will definitely kill his way to your door and exterminate your entire family." Although Xiaohua's voice was very faint, there seemed to be some kind of magic in his voice. Zhong Haoren trembled in fear and almost threw the jade pendant away. Fortunately, Xiaohua's hand landed on Zhong Haoren's shoulder, and Zhong Haoren's divine sense immediately came out from the jade pendant. "Many thanks for Tao Master Zhao's generous gift." Zhong Haoren was overjoyed. With this item he felt more confident. There are also these. Xiaohua touched his storage pouch again and took out a large pile of fire talismans. He said, "This is what I got from a sword cultivator. It's extremely precious. Take it to protect yourself. If there's no other choice, don't take it out." Jade talismans? Zhong Haoren's mouth almost fell open. "It's good that you know." Xiaohua nodded. "If this item were to leak out, my fortune gate would never have a day of peace. That's why I'm only using it as a last resort for self-defense." Yes, this disciple understands. How could Zhong Haoren not know the severity of the matter? He hurriedly put away the fire talismans. "All right, this Xiao has nothing else on him. Everything is in your hands." Xiaohua clapped his hands with a relaxed expression. This disciple once again thanks Dao Master Xiao for his great kindness. Zhong Haoren couldn't help but kneel again. Fei Yunshu and the others also followed suit. Good. Xiaohua did not stop them this time. After they finished kneeling, he helped them up and said, "This Xiao has done what he should do. The rest is up to you." This Xiao remembers that there was a rogue cultivator organization called Heaven Forsaken. It was formed by rogue cultivators at the early foundation establishment and qi refining stage. This Xiao wants to see if you can build my fortune gate into a bigger sect than Heaven Forsaken. Dao Master Xiao, rest assured. Zhong Haoren and the others were full of confidence. How can Heaven Forsaken compare to my fortune gate? My fortune gate will definitely become the #1 sect on the Dawn Rain mainland. This Xiao can rest assured with these words. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "This Xiao looks forward to it. Yes, this disciple and the others will definitely do our best to strengthen our fortune gate. We will definitely not disappoint Dao Master Xiao." Zhong Haoren and the others loudly agreed and flew out of the flowing cloud-flying ship. When Zhong Haoren and the others slowly flew away, the corners of Xiaohua's mouth curved into a faint smile. How could it be so easy to establish a sect? Especially with Zhong Haoren, who was only at the early foundation establishment stage, and Zhong Zhan, Zhong Pei, Qin Ji, and Fei Yunshu, who were only in the 10th layer of the qi refining stage? To them, it was not a problem to establish a small-scale sect. It was not realistic to develop it further. Rather than saying that Xiaohua was willing to take out something to establish the fortune gate, it was better to say that Xiaohua gave them a spiritual promise, giving them a goal to strive for. Even if they fail, what can they do? Xiaohua put away the flowing cloud-flying ship and turned around with a smile. At least they worked hard, at least they have the opportunity to cultivate. It's better than this young master's pitiful self in the past, right? Of course, who knew what would happen in the future? Even Xiaohua, who had comprehended the hand of karma, couldn't see through it. Perhaps this fortune gate would be similar to the 100 Talisman sect, claiming to be big behind closed doors. Perhaps it would be like what Zhong Haoren had said, becoming the #1 sect on the Dawn Rain continent. Or perhaps it could just barely develop into a cultivation sect similar to the 100 Herbs sect. In short, everything was possible under the heavenly Tao. Which sect's disciple are you, and why are you loitering here? While Xiaohua was contemplating, a voice sounded in front of him. When Xiaohua raised his head, he saw a group of Sky Patrol City's city guards flying over. Seeing that the city guards had discovered him, Xiaohua simply stopped in midair. He waited for a mid-foundation establishment city guard to lead a group of early foundation establishment disciples to stop about 10 zhang away from him, then cupped his fists and said, "This one is lightning controlling sex Xiaohua. I have received a special order from the main hall to deal with an important matter." Chapter 2566. The Conference Hall's Special Permit? The tall city guard did not let down his guard because of Xiaohua's words. Instead, he frowned and said, "Please take out the special permit, fellow cultivator Xiao." "Captain." While the captain was talking to Xiaohua, 2 or 3 city guards beside him were shocked. The city guard closest to the captain hurriedly whispered to him through telepathy. When Xiaohua took out his token, the city guard had also finished his telepathy. The captain, who was in the intermediate foundation establishment stage, was surprised. He even looked at Xiao Hua a few times before he cupped his hands and said, "So it's Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder sect who killed Qin Jian. Chu, sorry for the disrespect. However, fellow cultivator Xiao, please take out your token for me to check and let Chu confirm your identity. It's my duty, please forgive me." They issued the reward so quickly? Xiao Hua was surprised when he heard that. In his mind, he had made great contributions in the past and was repeatedly questioned by the conference hall. They even sent people to check. Killing Qin Jian was such a great contribution. Wouldn't the conference hall take a long time to verify it? How could they issue the reward so quickly? Fellow cultivator Chu, please check it. Xiao Hua took out his token and handed it to the city guard. Xiao Hua's command medallion was naturally normal. The seal of the assembly hall's special permission medallion was also inside. The city guard surnamed Chu looked at it and very respectfully returned it to Xiao Hua. His previous stern expression changed. However, within this respect, there seemed to be a hint of pretense. Immediately, city guard Chu smiled and said, "Fellow cultivator Xiao, are you going back to Sky Patrol City? Or did you just come out of Sky Patrol City?" Xiao Hua's eyes swiveled and he replied, "Neither. I was ordered by senior brother Li Zongbao to deliver the news. I was just passing by Sky Patrol City and was thinking about whether to return to Sky Patrol City to meet senior brother Li. Fellow cultivator Chu is here." Fellow cultivator Li Zongbao from the Utopia faction. City guard Chu's eyes lit up and he said with joy, "Chu was on duty in the south of Sky Patrol City some time ago and did not return to Sky Patrol City. I just heard from my disciple that the notorious sword cultivator Qin Jian was killed by fellow cultivator Xiao and fellow cultivator Li. This was truly satisfying. In particular, Qin Jian sneaked into my Sky Patrol City and assassinated Senior Tuesday. You have avenged my Sky Patrol City. Fellow Taoist Xiao, can you tell me what happened that day?" You flatter me, you flatter me. It's all thanks to fellow Taoist Li Zongbao's profound magic power. Fellow Taoist Xiao Maoxiao of Xuanyan School is also formidable. This humble one only played a supporting role from the side. I really don't dare to claim credit for myself. Xiao Hua hastily and humbly declined. Nonsense, even if Xiao Hua's little tail was raised high, he still didn't dare to casually say it out loud. Who knew how Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao reported it in the conference hall? Fellow cultivator Xiao is too humble. We really want to know how that evil Qin Jian was killed. The city guard surnamed Chu and the other city guards were envious. Evidently, they truly believed that Xiao Hua, a cultivator whose cultivation was similar to theirs, was able to obtain such a great military achievement because of luck. I really don't dare to claim credit for myself. Xiao Hua's face was slightly red, as if he was really ashamed. The more Xiao Hua acted like this, the more the city guard surnamed Chu pestered him. It was as if they really saw that if they had followed Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao to Flowing Ice Valley, Qin Jian would have been killed by them. Xiao Hua sneered in his heart, but his face was really red. This guy's blushing technique was absolutely perfect, even more skillful than the heaven and earth in the sleeve technique. Fellow Taoist Crooked Soul, farewell. Xiao Hua flew up and activated the command medallion with a flip of his hand. He said, "I'll call senior marshal brother Li Zongbao over and let him tell you about it. I still have a mission to complete." All right. The city guard surnamed Chu was also proud of himself. He was happier than killing Qin Jian, as if he had caught Xiao Hua's hypocrisy behind the military achievement. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's token didn't shine at all. Obviously, either the Sky Patrol City had blocked the transmission of the token, or Li Zongbao wasn't in the Sky Patrol City. Fellow Taoist Xiao. A city guard next to him smiled and said, "As early as a few days ago, the Golden Core stage masters in the meeting hall had led the disciples of various sects to the battlefield. I'm afraid fellow Taoist Li Zongbao has also left the Sky Patrol City with the disciples of the Utopia faction?" Xiao Hua's face was slightly shocked. "They've gone. Why didn't they inform me? I'm afraid fellow Taoist Li has other plans?" The city guard surnamed Chu said with a smile. Xiao Hua sneered and thought to himself, knowing that the disciples of various sects have already left the Sky Patrol City, they're still here making a fuss and not telling me the news. They're obviously making fun of me. Damn it, it seems that the Sky Patrol City doesn't care about the reward in the meeting hall. Of course, I'm not even at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment stage, so it's inevitable that they'll look down on me. Fellow Taoists, please enlighten me. Xiao Hua hurriedly asked, I wonder where Senior Brother Li or the Imperial Thunder sect are going to fight? This is a secret order from the meeting hall, we don't know about it. The city guard surnamed Chu said with a smile, at this time in the Sky Patrol City, there are disciples from various sects guarding the city. If fellow Taoist Xiao is in a hurry, you can go to the Sky Patrol City to ask first. Haha, no need. Xiao Hua hurriedly flew up and cupped his hands. I still have a mission to complete, I'll look for them after I've completed it. With that, Xiao Hua's figure headed towards the northwest, looking a little flustered. Haha, after Xiao Hua's figure disappeared, the city guard surnamed Chu burst out laughing. Even the other city guards were swaying back and forth. Damn it, this Xiao Hua is really lucky. With such a cultivation level? And he could even kill Qin Jian? If it weren't for the support of Li Zongbao from the Utopia faction and Xiao Mao from the Xuanyan school, who would have been killed by Qin Jian? Ha, you're right. Another city guard laughed until he was out of breath and said, look at his blushing face. He also knows how to feel ashamed. Also, when he heard about joining the battle, he immediately flew away, as if he was afraid of knowing where the battle line was. Such a cultivator. How could he make any contributions? He's just lucky, it's not that his cultivation level is high. A city guard said sarcastically. At this moment, a red message talisman flew over from the direction of the Sky Patrol City and stopped in front of the city guard surnamed Chu. The city guard managed to stop laughing and caught the message talisman. After he immersed his divine thought into it, his expression suddenly changed to one of extreme awkwardness and embarrassment. What's wrong? Captain Chu? A few city guards hurriedly asked. The city master's secret order. Send it to all the teams on duty in the Sky Patrol City. The city guard surnamed Chu said word by word, if you find traces of Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder sect, do not disturb him, immediately, directly report to the city master's mansion. Ah! All the city guards were shocked, and the sarcastic disciple almost screamed, What's going on? As the city guards of the Sky Patrol City, they knew better than anyone else the meaning of the sentence. If you find traces of Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder sect, do not disturb him, immediately report to the city master's mansion. Quickly send the message talisman to the city master. Captain Chu ordered a city guard beside him, then he turned and flew into the air. But after flying for less than 30 meters, he stopped again. His eyes gazed in the direction Xiao Hua had disappeared, and he forcefully extinguished the thought of pursuing him. He waved his hand and said, You all continue to patrol, Chu will go and meet the city master. Yes, I understand. The city guards replied in unison, then flew up again and continued to patrol in the same direction as before. However, their eyes were still looking in the direction where Xiao Hua flew. They really did not know. How did this disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, whose cultivation level was only in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment stage, offend the Snow Region Master? Of course, Xiao Hua did not know that when he sent Zhong Haoren and the others back to the Sky Patrol City, in the lofty city master's mansion in the Sky Patrol City, the Snow Region Master, whom he was afraid of 2 hours ago, was sitting cross-legged on the cattail hassock. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and no one knew what he was thinking. However, his expression was not calm, which showed that he was not meditating. Strange. Why do I feel a little uneasy? The Snow Region Master opened his eyes slightly, and there was a trace of confusion under his eyelids. Could it be that there is a breakthrough in the Qianzhan mysterious technique? After the Snow Region Master circulated his technique, his snow-white eyebrows trembled slightly, and the confusion turned into a trace of ecstasy, but it disappeared in a flash. I really did not expect this. The Qianzhan mysterious technique, which I have not made any progress in all this time, is actually making progress here. This progress is not much, but no matter what, it is the biggest progress in the last 100 years. The Snow Region Master's expression returned to normal and he thought to himself, before the Tao Cultivator War, I went into closed-door cultivation for more than 10 years and took countless pills, but I didn't see any progress. This Tao Cultivator War has only been going on for 10 years, and I have been so worried about the war that I didn't have time to cultivate. I didn't even do my homework, but my cultivation level has actually improved. It's really like when you plant flowers, the flowers don't bloom, but when you plant a willow, the willow grows. Thinking about this, the Snow Region Master raised his eyebrows and whispered, Lengbai, you have been waiting outside for 2 days. What can you do for me? Following the Snow Region Master's words, there was a flash of light and Fong Lengbai's figure appeared outside the door. When Fong Lengbai heard the Snow Region Master speak, he was very surprised. He quickly walked in and bowed. Disciple has nothing special to do, but I heard that the city master hasn't dealt with any city matters during this time, so Disciple came to tell the city master about the war. What is there to say? The Snow Region Master sneered. In this Tao Cultivator War, my Tao sect will suffer a great loss. There is no one among this group of Golden Core cultivators that knows how to strategize, so how could they gain an advantage? They can only wait for those old nascent soul cultivators to clean up their mess. Chapter 2567. Fong Lengbai wanted to laugh but did not dare to laugh when he heard Sage Xueyu say, wipe his ass. However, based on Sage Xueyu's words, Fong Lengbai knew that Sage Xueyu was in an extremely good mood. After a while, Fong Lengbai suppressed his laughter and reported, in the past few days, the conference hall has sent out orders for disciples from all sects to go on expeditions. We've already found out the power distribution of the sword cultivators in the Huan Kingdom. Based on this information, the conference hall has sent out another order for the final battle. Now, the Golden Core cultivators in the conference hall have set out on a large scale, bringing all the cultivators to the Huan Kingdom. Our Sky Patrol City has also sent out more than 80,000 disciples. As he spoke, Fong Lengbai held up a jade pendant above his head. I've asked the City Lord about this matter, but the City Lord ignored me, so I can only act on my own. It's fine. Master Xueyu grabbed the jade pendant and it flew into his hand. However, he didn't even look at it. He nodded and said, everything related to the war in the Sky Patrol City has been handed over to you and Jin Kung. Your decision is my decision. No matter how stupid you are, you don't need me to wipe your ass for you. Ta. Fong Lengbai couldn't help but laugh. He bowed respectfully and said, Disciple congratulates the City Lord on improving your cultivation again. Ha, Master Xueyu laughed loudly, my cultivation is still not enough. You still saw through it. Hee, Disciple has followed the City Lord for over 100 years. The City Lord treats Disciple like a nephew. Disciple knows that the City Lord is focused on cultivation and doesn't pay much attention to the war. Previously, the City Lord was in a bad mood and didn't even see Disciple. Now that the City Lord is in a good mood, Disciple naturally knows. It has nothing to do with the City Lord's state of mind. Fong Lengbai said honestly. That's right. Master Xueyu wiped his eyebrows with his finger and said with a smile, although I don't pay much attention to the war, I still know the general trend. However, the conference hall sent out the order for the final battle so early, which is beyond my expectations. When Fong Lung heard this, he was just about to take out a jade slip from his sleeve. However, when he saw Xueyu Jinren's rare interest, he stopped himself and smiled. What does the City Lord think? According to this old man's original opinion, the conference hall would release some bait to lure out sword cultivators from the country of Shi and country of Lian. Then they would kill them one by one. This way, perhaps they could delay it for 3 to 5 years. But now, how did these core formation brats suddenly have the courage? A decisive battle? This is something this old man didn't expect. Perfected Shui, you seem to be deep in thought. If they had the guts to do so, coupled with Tu Hong's scheme, the battle between Tao cultivators would have been decided long ago instead of being pushed to the outskirts of Sky Patrol City by sword cultivators. Ha! Fong Lingbai smiled and wanted to put his hand into his sleeve, but Master Shui raised his voice again. Lingbai, yes, Sir City Lord, what instructions do you have? Fong Lung's hand stopped as he hurriedly asked. Is there any movement near the sword mound? Sword mound? Fong Lingbai was taken aback. After thinking for a moment, he smiled bitterly and said, well, Sir City Lord, this time, many sword cultivators have forced their way into the country of Shi and country of Lian. The sword mound is already behind the sword cultivators' defensive line and is very far away. The city guards of Sky Patrol City can't patrol the sword mound together with the disciples of the various sects during the battle between sword cultivators. They only told me when they were stationed in Sky Patrol City, to inform them if there was news about the sword mound in Sky Patrol City. Perfected Shui, you didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He slapped his forehead and said, oh my God. The sword mound is the last barrier for the sword cultivators to retreat. If they don't know about the situation in the sword mound, and the sword cultivators are forced to retreat, will they chase after them? Maybe they have been suppressed by the sword cultivators, and the battle line has long gone beyond the sword mound. They never thought that there would be a day where they would fight the sword cultivators to the sword mound, right? Fong Lingbai replied with a smile. It was as if this war was a good show happening beside Sky Patrol City and had nothing to do with them. How can such a kid defeat the sword cultivators? Perfected Shuiyu snorted. Looks like there won't be any Golden Core disciples who can stand out in this war. Of course, which Golden Core cultivator can compare with Junior Brother 2? Fong Lingbai couldn't help but blurt it out. But when he said it, his heart trembled, and he stole a glance at Perfected Shuiyu. Perfected Shuiyu only snorted, I naturally think highly of Tu Hong's talent, but he's too bold. He's unlucky. Yes, but... Fong Lingbai touched his sleeves again. Just as he was about to speak, Perfected Shuiyu asked again, Lingbai, you said that the meeting hall doesn't care about the sword mound. Although Sky Patrol City patrols the sword mound, the swordsmen in the sword mound aren't important. Could it be that the sword cultivators this time are all mediocre? They didn't make an issue out of the sword mound? I'm not sure. Fong Lingbai smiled apologetically. After all, the sword mound is behind the sword cultivators, and the sword mound is thousands of miles wide. We can't completely inspect it, so who knows what's inside? Of course, according to the records of the previous war, the sword cultivators have a 50% chance of resisting stubbornly in the sword mound, blocking our cultivators outside the sword mound. After all, once we break through the sword mound, we'll be in the Huan country's territory. Tisich, so what about the Huan country's territory? That place is even colder than my snow region's highlands. Who would want to go there? Perfected Shuiyu was disdainful, then sighed, Sigh, it's a pity that our Dao Sect's transportation array has been lost. If we had a formation master to refine it, this war wouldn't be so difficult. If there was a transportation array, I'm afraid this war would be even more difficult. Fong Lingbai smiled apologetically. That's right, those Golden Core brats in the meeting hall. I'm afraid they would have been beaten into cowards by the sword cultivators. Our Sky Patrol City's spirit stone veins wouldn't have fallen into their hands. Perfected Shuiyu laughed. Yes, Fong Lingbai nodded, then said, that's right, according to the latest war report, the spirit stone veins in the Seven Extremes Mountains have been seized by the Imperial Thunder Sect and the Huanhua Sect. The latest war report is in your sleeve, right? Perfected Shuiyu laughed. Fong Lingbai wiped the sweat from his forehead and smiled. I should have taken it out long ago, but seeing the city lord so happy, I didn't want to disturb you. Show it to me. Perfected Shuiyu stretched out his hand and said, see if there's any other good news. Sir. Fong Lingbai raised the jade slip and said with a smile, besides this, there's another piece of good news. What is it? Perfected Shuiyu took the jade slip and asked casually. Qin Jian, who tried to assassinate junior brother Tu Hong, was killed by 3 cultivators from the Dao sect. This can be considered as helping Sky Patrol City vent our anger. Fong Lengbai said with a smile, but then he thought of something and hurriedly said, "Of course, even if the city lord's judgment is that Qin Jian might not be the one who tried to assassinate junior brother Tu, these 3 disciples from the Dao sect have helped us vent our anger. This Qin Jian was too arrogant, he even killed 3 golden core cultivators before he died." "Oh, which 3 golden core cultivators?" Perfected Shuiyu was surprised to hear that Qin Jian had been killed, so he probed the jade slip with his spiritual force and asked casually. "Not golden core cultivators. 3 foundation establishment stage disciples." Fong Lengbai smiled apologetically. The report in the meeting hall was a little vague, but it should be that Qin Jian was severely injured by the 3 golden core cultivators, and the 3 foundation establishment stage disciples took the opportunity to kill him. "How is that possible?" Perfected Shuiyu said coldly. Qin Jian was a 3rd-grade illusory swordsman, and his cultivation level was comparable to an advanced golden core cultivator. How could 3 foundation establishment stage disciples kill him? This credit? I'm afraid it's fake, right? Fong Lengbai's back was drenched in cold sweat when he saw Perfected Shuiyu's gaze. He quickly smiled apologetically and said, "The fake credit was done by the disciples of the various sects who participated in the battle. It has nothing to do with Sky Patrol City. Who would dare to fake the credit for something as important as killing Qin Jian?" Li Zongbao from the Utopia faction even brought back Qin Jian's head and sword token, so it can't be fake. Li Zongbao from the Utopia faction, Xiao Mao from the Xuanyan school, Xiao Hua from the Imperial Thunder sect? Perfected Shuiyu frowned and said in confusion, "One is in the Advanced Foundation Establishment stage, one is in the Middle Foundation Establishment stage, and one is at the peak of the Initial Foundation Establishment stage? Isn't this a joke?" Even if Qin Jian was lying there, his flying sword was not something that the 3 of them could block, right? Chapter 2568. City Governor, do you believe me? The cultivators in the meeting hall believe me. I couldn't wait for the city governor's order, so I sent the promised reward to the meeting hall without permission. Fong Lengbai said hesitantly, "I didn't dare to delay this matter that involved junior brother Tu Hong. I didn't want to hurt the disciples of Sky Patrol City. There must be something fishy about this." Shuiyu Perfected Master said coldly, "The swordsman who assassinated Tu Hong wasn't Qin Jian. I was lured by a sword that day, and I left Sky Patrol City on the day Tu Hong was assassinated. I saw Qin Jian hundreds of miles away from Sky Patrol City. If he could assassinate Tu Hong before me, he would be a divine sword cultivator." Ah? Fong Lengbai was shocked. So, the person who assassinated junior brother Tu in Sky Patrol City wasn't Qin Jian? Then, who is this fake Qin Jian? According to the cultivators at the scene, this fake Qin Jian was Qin Jian's face, and he was also using flying sword techniques. Especially, the sword formation. It's definitely not my Dao cultivator's flying sword. The flying sword and the sword formation are not surprising. Shuiyu Perfected Master's face darkened. There are 2 key points. First, how did the assassin escape from Sky Patrol City? Second, what's so special about the sword formation that it made Tu Hong, who was always calm, go crazy? Hiss! Fong Lengbai suddenly thought of a possibility. He gasped and said in shock, "Could it be? City Governor, that's right." Shuiyu Perfected Master's tone was terrifying. "I've been thinking about these days, and I think that the assassin might not have left Sky Patrol City at all, so my tricks at the city gate and teleportation formation were ineffective. Besides, if the assassin could impersonate Qin Jian, he could also impersonate someone else. That's how he escaped my detection. Also, in the sword formation, I'm afraid there's some soul cultivator's item that can disturb people's minds." Soul cultivator? Fong Lengbai bit his lips. Could it be that a soul cultivator is here too? That's possible. Shuiyu Perfected Master narrowed his eyes. Then he raised his eyebrows and said loudly, "Golden Pit? Why are you so flustered?" When Fong Lung heard this, he smiled apologetically and said, "Senior brother Jean is impatient and doesn't have the time to wait outside the hall. He has already been here a few times. Seeing the city lord open the hall today, I'm afraid there's something going on." Disciple Jean King greets the city lord. Jean King walked up to the main hall and bowed. "All right, get up." Shui Yu waved his hand and said, "You rushed into the main hall the moment you entered my residence. Is there something important?" Jean King said as he took out a jade slip from his bosom, handed it forward and said, "Yesterday, I cleaned up the jade slip and found that before Tu Hong Lin left, there was a period of time when the records of the meeting hall were not sent to the mansion, so I went to Tu Hong's mansion and found this jade slip in the closed study room." "Is there anything special about it?" Shui Yu Sage asked patiently. Jean King was also stunned. He raised his head and looked at Shui Yu. Just like Fong Lengbai, he immediately sensed that Shui Yu was in a good mood. He glanced at Fong Lengbai and bowed. "Disciple congratulates City Lord for improving your cultivation." "Ha!" Shui Yu Sage laughed and said, "Tell me, what did you find?" "This." Jean King bit his lips and said hesitantly, "Disciple checked this jade slip and found something strange in it. Tu Hong recorded what happened in the meeting hall during those days, including Li Zongbao from the Utopia faction and Xiao Hua from the Thunder Control sect." "Oh? Is there also Xiao Mao from the Xuanyan school?" Fong Lung asked in surprise. "Yes, it's the three people who killed Qin Jian." Jean King obviously knew about this and nodded. However, according to the records in the jade slip, Xiao Mao had just been rescued by Xiao Hua from the Yinyang Twin Springs Mountain. Oh, or rather, he was brought back. Taoist Master Shui's snow-white eyebrows twitched even though there was no wind. He suddenly had a bad feeling. In this jade slip, Li Zongbao and Xiao Hua's series of military exploits are recorded. This disciple found it inconceivable. These two Foundation establishment cultivators did many things that even Golden Core cultivators couldn't accomplish. This disciple won't speak of the specifics. This jade slip has all the records. Sir City Lord will know with a single glance. Jean Kang said concisely, "What surprised me the most was that at the end of the jade slip, junior brother Tu Hong wrote this sentence." "What sentence?" Fong Leng interrupted curiously. According to disciples' observation, Li Zongbao and Xiao Hua must have a secret skill that can greatly improve their cultivation in a short period of time. Moreover, this person is very intelligent and seems to be hiding something. If it's Li Zongbao, then he has a domineering aura behind his arrogance. If it's Xiao Hua, then he has a murderous aura behind his modesty. However, according to disciples' observation of the Golden Core stage cultivators in the meeting hall, they seem to have noticed it too, but they didn't point it out. I think these Dao sect cultivators must be plotting something. Maybe they want to suppress our Sky Patrol city, or maybe they want to show off their power to us. Of course, Li Zongbao is the main reason, because Heng Lu always helps Li Zongbao cover up at the crucial moment. Moreover, disciple feels that some of Xiao Hua's achievements were given to him by Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao. "This is nothing?" Fong Lung Bi asked curiously. "The three cultivators have a good relationship. Otherwise, they wouldn't have joined hands to kill Qin Jian." But why didn't Qian Mo know about Xiao Hua's cultivation? Then why didn't the Golden Core cultivators in the meeting hall know? Why didn't they say it out loud? Firstly, they didn't know that the person who assassinated Junior 2 was definitely not Qin Jian. Didn't the city lord also suspect that it was a soul cultivator? Even he didn't suspect the Dao sect cultivators. How could they have thought of it? Jean Kang retorted, "Furthermore, even if they saw something, that Xiao Hua is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, what does it have to do with them? Qian Mo, that sanctimonious thing, is blind. I'm afraid he really couldn't see it. Why would those Golden Core cultivators remind him?" "I still don't agree. This is a 1-in-a-million situation. Of course, this is also the most ideal deduction." Fong Lung Bi stubbornly disagreed. What if there wasn't this, how could I cultivate to the nascent soul stage? If there wasn't this, how could you all condense your core? Shui Yu Master laughed sinisterly. I have a feeling that this Xiao Hua is the main force that killed Qin Jian. Hearing Shuiyu Master's words, Fang Lingbi didn't dare to say anything else. Where is Xiao Hua now? Shuiyu Master asked. Reporting to the city lord. Fang Lingbi hurriedly said, according to the meeting hall, he didn't even return to Sky Patrol City, he was sent somewhere else by Li Zongbao. What place? This, the meeting hall didn't say. This disciple doesn't know. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.